Chapter 6:14. Xian Longzi was from a Taoist sect, but he was a true madman. He did things based on his emotions and did not consider the consequences. The Celestial Master Abode had sent him to solve the problem of the Hidden Devil Clan, but he had wanted to incite the Hidden Devil Clan to fight to the death with the Great Light Temple. Now that he had seen Chu Xiu's power, he wanted to attack Chu Xiu on a whim. There was no logic to it. Xian Longzi had been locked up for 10 years, and there were even people in the Celestial Master Abode who wanted to lock him up for another 10 years to prevent him from jumping out and causing trouble. It was Zhang Daoling who put in a good word for this junior brother that allowed him to be released. In the end, the first thing that happened after he was released was that Xian Longzi was going crazy. At that moment, Xian Longzi raised his eyebrows when he saw Chu Xiu, who was like a lamp that had run out of oil and had no strength to resist at all. Just as he was about to do something, he heard a cold voice say, "Xian Longzi, I'm afraid that you've been locked up for too long and have gone crazy, right? Do you have no shame to attack a junior like you?" Demonic energy swept out and Chu Wuji's figure appeared in front of Chu Xiu. This made Chu Xiu let out a long sigh of relief. Actually, Chu Xiu had vaguely guessed that Wei Shuya and the others would not just throw him out and ignore him. After all, he was seeking revenge for the Hidden Devil Clan 300 years ago. There was no guarantee that this would not attract some big shot, an existence that Chu Xiu could not resist. However, Chu Xiu had never liked to put his life in the hands of others. Even if Chu Xiu knew that there was a high possibility of someone secretly supporting him, he still did his best. At this moment, Xian Longzi saw that the person who came was Chu Wuji. He rubbed his head and seemed to suddenly remember something. He said, "Oh, you're the unlucky prince whose country was destroyed by the Northern Yan. You're called Chu Wuji, right? You're right about one thing. I'm really shameless." "What's shame? What good will it do?" Chu Wuji's complexion turned black from anger. This Xian Longzi's mouth was truly poisonous, directly stabbing the most painful part of his heart. The reason why he was able to survive until now without being beaten to death was because he was strong and had a strong backer. "Xian Longzi, you're courting death." Chu Wuji had a good temper when he was young. Young Master Wei, Chu Wuji, was famous for being tolerant and magnanimous. He liked to make friends in the pugilistic world. As for the current Dharma Supreme Miao Yu Chu Wuji, the impression in the hearts of the people of the Diabolism was that he was decisive and cold, and his temper could not be considered good. At this moment, hearing Xian Longzi's deliberate or unintentional ridicule, Chu Wuji immediately exploded. With a wave of his hand, demonic qi condensed in mid-air, and a blood moon faintly appeared. It fell from the sky, and in an instant, a sinister wind howled. Demonic qi surged violently, and its power was incomparably majestic. Xian Longzi's figure retreated like lightning, and he casually threw out 5 huge lightning bolts as thick as buckets. The 5 qi merged into one, and the power of yin and yang lightning burst out, smashing the blood moon. The Celestial Master Mansion's secret 5 Thunders True technique was displayed by Xian Longzi, and it was simply as if he was casually throwing garbage. A strange weapon appeared in Chu Wuji's hand. It was like a saber but not a saber, like a crescent moon, and there was an evil crimson color on it. This was Chu Wuji's famous divine weapon, Miao Yu. As Chu Wuji's hand moved, Miao Yu appeared in the sky, like a blood moon descending, and murderous intent was everywhere. Xian Longzi was also considered a talent. He could use one sentence to stimulate Chu Wuji to such an extent. Both of them were at the peak of the real pellet state. Chu Wuji was known as the powerhouse with the most hope to step into the real fire spirit refinement state in this generation of the Yinma lineage. Xian Longzi's limelight in the past even surpassed Zhang Daoling, who was now in charge of the Celestial Master Mansion on behalf of the old Celestial Master. It was conceivable how strong he was. It could be said that as long as it was not a life and death battle, the two of them would not be able to determine the winner in a short time. As the blood moon and lightning exploded, the surrounding world Yuan Qi within 100 zhang radius was completely sucked dry by the battle between the two of them. It actually formed a power vacuum zone, which was extremely terrifying. It was clear how astonishing the explosive power of the two of them was. The two of them fiercely exchanged dozens of blows, and in the end, they retreated almost at the same time. The two of them almost reached the peak that the real pellet state could accommodate, and their strength was not much different. If they really wanted to determine a winner, it would become a life and death battle. Chu Wuji naturally would not fight to death because of a sentence. Similarly, although Xian Longzi was a madman, He was just a little crazy in his actions. He was not the kind of person who would disregard his own life when he was crazy. Chu Wuji looked at Xianlongzi and snorted coldly. It was really a wrong decision for the Celestial Master Mansion to let you out. With your virtue, who knows when you will kill the Celestial Master Mansion? Xianlongzi laughed indifferently. Everyone does things the same way. What's the point of hesitating and worrying so much? Isn't it better to have a little more excitement? After looking at Xianlongzi coldly for a while, Chu Wuji spat out 2 words faintly. You're crazy. He himself was also crazy. He actually tangled with this madman for so long. Chu Wuji turned and looked at Su Xing, who was clutching the wound on his chest, his aura extremely weak. Murderous intent appeared in his eyes, but he did not attack. He just sneered and said, Su Xing, you are lucky that the madman came out to mess things up. Otherwise, even if Lin Yi did not kill you, I would have killed you. Chu Wuji's personality was similar to Chu Xiu's. In some aspects he was also daring. It would have been fine if Su Xing did not come to provoke him, but now Su Xing dared to come to Ba Mountain Sword Sect to kill him. Then Chu Wuji did not mind killing him. But now, because of Xianlongzi's interference, killing Su Xing was for the Celestial Master Mansion to watch a good show. Chu Wuji did not want to kill him. Su Xing covered his wound and snorted. If you want to kill me, then kill me. Do you think I'm afraid of you? You demonic villains, sooner or later, you will meet your end. Su Xing wasn't just spouting threats. He really wasn't afraid of death. The monks raised by the Great Light Temple had extreme personalities, but there were not many who were afraid of death. And Su Xing believed that if he died here today, his senior brother, the abbot, would kill 10 times as many demonic people to avenge him. Chu Wuji looked at Chu Xiu and said, Well done. Elder Wei is waiting for you to celebrate. Let's go. As he spoke, Chu Wuji waved his hand and led Chu Xiu, Luo Sansong and the others down the mountain. Luo Sansong and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Su Xing was not afraid of death, but they did not want to die for no reason. It was clearly a one-sided situation, and they were about to complete the mission. But in the end, martial arts grandmasters came one after another as if they were free. Who could stand this? Behind them, Xianlongzi watched as Chu Wuji left with his people. He did not stop them because he could not stop them. It would be fine if there was one more helper. But Xianlongzi glanced at Chen Jiankong. Forget about this trash. The only one who breathed a sigh of relief was Chen Jiankong. This group of fiends had finally left. Although the Xiang family had been killed in the end, at least the Ba Mountain Sword Sect had not suffered too great a loss. But at this time, Xianlongzi suddenly said to Chen Jiankong, What do you think will happen if I kill Su Xing? Chen Jiankong's expression suddenly changed. If Su Xing died here, the Ba Mountain Sword Sect would not be able to escape responsibility. But then Xianlongzi laughed and patted Chen Jiankong's shoulder. Ha ha ha, I'm just playing with you. Monkey Chen, you're still as interesting as before. Why do you take everything so seriously? Chen Jiankong's face darkened. If this continued, he would be toyed to death by this madman sooner or later. On the way down the mountain, Chu Wuji tossed a medicinal pill to Chu Xiu and said with a smile, Kid, you completed the mission well this time. You did better than Senior Wei and I expected. Chu Xiu swallowed the pill. Immediately, a warm flow rose from his body like a stream, gradually replenishing Chu Xiu's strength. Pausing, Chu Xiu asked, Then what did Elder Chu and Elder Wei imagine about me? Chu Wuji said indifferently, Actually, when Senior Wei gave you the list of names, he never thought that you would be able to deal with all the powers on the list. That's because the range of territories is too large. Even I wouldn't be able to do it. After all, I can't teleport. This matter is only to show the existence of my Yinma lineage. The key lies in the process, the meaning and not the result. So as long as you can eliminate 1/3 of the forces on this list, which is almost the forces of a country, after attracting those big sects, I will naturally take care of it. If I can't, then there's still Elder Wei. But I didn't expect you to be so nimble. In the Battle of Red Maple Valley, you directly used a trick to make those forces come to your door to trap and kill them. You did well, really well, it saved me some effort. Although Chu Wuji's tone was indifferent, there was a trace of admiration in his eyes as he looked at Chu Xiu. There were too many factions in the Yinma lineage. Moreover, some of the older generation of Devil Dao martial artists were actually very strong, but when they were asked to really plan something, their actions could be said to be simple and crude. Chu Wuji had once discussed this matter with Wei Shuya. In any case, from Chu Wuji's point of view, Mo lacked everything right now. Not only did he lack experts, but he also lacked an existence like Chu Xiu, who had both ability and strength. Chu Xiu looked at Chu Wuji in surprise. He never thought that the Inma lineage would secretly prepare to play such a big game. Isn't Mo afraid of causing a real war between the righteous and the demonic? Chu Wuji shook his head and said, "We did not touch the bottom line of those righteous sects, so the war between the righteous and the demonic will not start. In the last battle at Floating Jade Mountain, it was because the 5 great sword sects went too far. They actually used my Devil Dao's Good Fortune Demon flag as a joke. Speaking of which, my Inma lineage should really thank the moon-worshipping cult. All these years, the moon-worshipping cult has been accumulating strength and keeping a low profile. Now that they have risen, their strength is indeed shocking. For those righteous sects, their enemy is not us rats, but the moon-worshipping cult." Chapter 6:15. The matter of the Ba Mountain Sword sect spread far and wide in the Jianghu, not only because of what Chu Xiu had done, but also because Xian Longzi had come out of seclusion again and fought with Chu Wuji. No matter how strong Lin Ye's status was, he could not compare to an expert like Xian Longzi, who had stirred up countless storms in the Jianghu 10 years ago. This madman had caused a lot of trouble in the Jianghu. He had not appeared in the Jianghu for a decade, and some people had forgotten him. But now that he had appeared again, many people, such as Chen Jiankong, gnashed their teeth in hatred. When everyone recovered from their shock and Xian Longzi reappeared in the Jianghu, the second thing was that Lin Yi had defeated Chen Jiankong and seriously injured Su Xing. One of these two was the sect leader of the Ba Mountain Sword sect. Although people the same level knew that Chen Jiankong was not very strong, he was still a sect leader and one of the top figures in the Jianghu. But he had been easily defeated by Lin Yi. And Su Xing. This person was even more unlucky. Previously in Xiaofan Heaven, Su Xing had been seriously injured by Lin Yi with the 7 demon swords. He had already lost face, and was regarded as one of Lin Ye's achievements in ascending to the Longhu ranking. However, at that time, Lin Yi had turned around and fled after severely injuring Xu Xing. Therefore, most people thought that Xu Xing had only been severely injured because he had been careless and allowed Lin Ye's sneak attack to succeed. In a head-on battle, Xu Xing's strength was actually superior to Lin Ye's. But this time at the peak of Ba Mountain, Lin Yi had defeated Chen Jiankong and then seriously injured Su Xing in front of so many warriors. This matter was quite shocking, so Wind Sweeping Tower had raised Lin Ye's ranking from 3rd to 2nd, pushing Zhong Xian down. Although Zhong Xian was also very strong, he did not have such a brilliant record as Lin Yi. Of course, what was even more embarrassing was that Lin Yi had relied on heavily injuring Su Xing of the Great Light Temple to rank 2nd on the Longhu list. Therefore, if Su Xing had not chosen to chase after Lin Yi this time and had insisted on finding trouble with Lin Yi, he might not have stirred up so much trouble. Su Xing had also contributed a lot in helping Lin Yi rank 2nd on the Longhu list. It was said that when Su Xing, who was recuperating in the Temple of Great Light, heard this news, he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood, and his injuries worsened. Moreover, the people of the pugilistic world had also heard that Wind Sweeping Tower was prepared to give the Great Guangming Temple some face this time. They did not choose to promote Lin Yi to the 2nd place on the Longhu leaderboard. After all, the other party was from the demonic path. It was fine to suppress him a little. In the end, Xian Longzi, that lunatic, personally came to Dongqi's Nanliang city, to the headquarters of Wind Sweeping Tower. He sat there and refused to leave. He insisted that Wind Sweeping Tower adhere to the duty of a Jianghu news agent and that they could not engage in under-the-table operations. In the end, Wind Sweeping Tower was truly afraid of this lunatic. They could only follow the normal procedure and promote Lin Yi to 2nd place on the Longhu leaderboard. Of course, Xian Longzi was not doing this to help Lin Yi. He only wanted to anger the Great Light Temple. Some of the unaffiliated martial artists were more interested in this pugilistic world's gossip, but some of the orthodox sects were slightly worried. If they were not careful, Lin Yi, who was from the demonic path, had already stepped into 2nd place on the Longhu leaderboard. Over the years, although there were also people from demonic path sects who had reached 1st place on the Longhu leaderboard, there were very few of them. No matter how one compared them, the number of martial artists from the orthodox path was the majority. In addition, Wind Sweeping Tower would sometimes more or less suppress and deliberately ignore them. Therefore, in the recent hundreds of years, there were very few demonic path elites who could step into first place on the Longhu leaderboard. Lin Yi had only appeared in the pugilistic world for a short period of time, but he had already stepped into second place on the Longhu leaderboard. Only God knew if he would step into first place. Fortunately, although Zhang Qingjun was no longer on the Longhu leaderboard, Chu Xiu was not weak either. It should not be a problem for him to stop Lin Yi from getting promoted again. Although Chu Xiu was also extremely ruthless and did not come from the orthodox path sects, at least he was not from the demonic path. He would not let people say that there was no talent among the younger generation of the orthodox path sections. Chu Xiu did not know about these things in the pugilistic world for the time being. At this moment, he was following Chu Wuji to the secret branch of the Yinma clan. The reason why the Yinma clan could hide so deeply was that the entire Yinma clan did not have a specific gathering place. Everyone usually fought on their own. Some of them were from sects, while others were alone or with some disciples. You could find one, but not all of them. Only when something big happened would Wei Shuya, who was a senior member of the Yinma clan, appear and choose a place to gather everyone. The place that Wei Shuya chose this time was the secret land of West Chu. Moreover, it was the kind of secret land that was hidden very deeply. It was even in another independent space. It was said that the ancient experts had the strength to open up an independent space. However, that was only a legend. No one knew whether anyone could do this. However, there were indeed many secret places in the pugilistic world. They were in independent spaces. After setting up a formation, they were extremely hidden and difficult to be discovered. West Chu was relatively dangerous for the Yinma clan. Whether it was the moon-worshipping cult or the celestial master mansion, they were actually the enemies of the Yinma clan. Therefore, the secret land that was set up here was also extremely hidden. Even except for Luo Sansong and Zhao Chengping, who were relatively strong in the Yinma clan, other people were not even qualified to enter this place. After dispersing most of the people, Chu Wuji led Chu Xiu and a few others into the innumerable huge mountains. After twisting and turning for a long time, they found a huge banyan tree that was as thick as 5 people. As Chu Wuji made a seal in his hand, a huge door suddenly appeared on the banyan tree. Chu Wuji took the lead to walk in with his people. A black light flashed in front of Chu Xiu, but his figure appeared in a dark space. There was only a faint light in the center of this place. The surroundings were pitch black. Of course, it was not completely dark. It seemed that there were black shadows surrounding in the air, emitting a faint green light. Looking carefully, it turned out to be a high platform with a bronze throne standing on it. There was a figure sitting on each bronze throne. There were more or less people standing behind them, but their specific faces could not be seen. Moreover, the bronze throne seemed to have the effect of concealing one's aura. At least from where Chu Xiu stood, he could not sense any aura from the bronze throne at all, nor could he see any faces. Chu Wuji nodded at Chu Xiu, then led Luo Sansong and the others to a high platform and stood behind him. At the same time, an old voice came from the bronze throne on the high platform. I'm sure everyone already knows about the rumors in the Jianghu. Lin Yi is the most outstanding talent of the Yinma clan. This time, he will represent the Yinma clan to take revenge for the grudge from 300 years ago. With one battle, he will make the Yinma clan famous in the Jianghu. I dare say that in the entire Yinma clan, no one can compare to Lin Yi. Even in the Bright Demon clan, whether it is the boy who swallowed the blood dragon's inner elixir and cultivated the demonic beast cultivation method, or the short-lived saintess of the moon-worshipping cult, none of them can compare to Lin Yi of the Yinma clan. Chu Xiu could tell that the person who spoke was Wei Shuya. The thrones on the high platform were surrounded by people. Those who were qualified to sit on the thrones were obviously people of the Yinma clan who were qualified to sit on the same level as Wei Shuya in terms of strength and experience. Looking at the number, the strength of the Yinma clan was indeed much stronger than people in the Jianghu had imagined. However, these thrones did not seem to be full. It was unknown whether those people did not come or they had already died. At this time, hearing Wei Shuya's words, some people on the high platform sneered. The people sitting on the thrones were the real big shots of the Yinma clan. The others should be their disciples or people on their side, just like Chu Wuji. Chu Xiu remembered that Mr. Lu or Chu Wuji had once told him that this opportunity was personally given to him by Wei Shuya, but it caused some dissatisfaction among the other big shots of the Yinma clan. Because this was a good opportunity to make a name for himself, and it was not difficult. If someone else had led the team, although they would not have done as well as Chu Xiu, The process itself was more important than the result. As Chu Wuji had said, as long as Chu Xiao could get rid of 1/3 of the forces on the list, the task would be completed. Therefore, many big shots had wanted to get their disciples and successors to do this, but Wei Shuya had forcefully rejected them. After all, Wei Shuya was the only survivor of the 5 skyscraping demons in the 9th Heaven Mountain. He had the absolute priority to make the decision on this matter. But now it seemed that there were still many people who were dissatisfied with him. Wei Shuya glanced in that direction coldly and said coldly, "Since when do these juniors have the right to be sarcastic in the Alliance's meeting? Don't you have any rules? If you can't control your disciples, then I'll do it for you." As soon as he finished speaking, the devil chi around Wei Shuya surged faintly, and its power was extremely terrifying. Although Wei Shuya looked like an old man on the surface, he was one of the 5 skyscraping demons of the 9th Heaven Mountain who dared to fight against the entire orthodox martial world in the past. He was known as a giant of the diabolism. Now that he was angry, the entire place fell silent. After glancing around, Wei Shuya said in a deep voice, "No one can doubt Lin Ye's ability, and his strength is also recognized. Among the younger generation of the pugilistic world, only Lin Yi is able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the elites of the orthodox martial world. The rules of the Yinma clan are very simple. With strength and ability you can obtain everything. Therefore, I propose to open the devil heavenly realm left behind by the former patriarch Dugu to Lin Yi for 24 hours. As soon as he said this, the big shots of the diabolism who had been silent all this while shouted angrily at almost the same time, "Impossible!" Some of them even couldn't help but stand up, showing how agitated they were. Chapter 6:16. The Devil Heaven Realm was very important to the hidden devil lineage because it was said that it contained the inheritance of Dugu Wei Wei. The Devil Heaven Realm wasn't called the Devil Heaven Realm before. It was just a secret realm that Dugu Wei Wei used for seclusion in the past. When the Kunlun devil cult was still around, no one dared to enter it except for Dugu Wei Wei. However, when Dugu Wei Wei was about to fight with Ning Xuanji, he suddenly told his trusted subordinates about the method to enter the Devil Heaven Realm, but he didn't say what it meant. Later on, with the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult, the hidden devil lineage hid in the dark and didn't dare to show themselves. The inheritors of Dugu Wei Wei's trusted subordinates wanted to open the Devil Heaven Realm to see if Dugu Wei Wei had left anything behind. However, it was a pity that after they entered the Devil Heaven Realm, apart from observing the traces left behind by Dugu Wei Wei and comprehending some things, they didn't get any unexpected gains. Therefore, in the following hundreds of years, many experts and young elites of the hidden devil lineage had entered the Devil Heaven Realm, but they didn't get anything. However, the descendants still felt that Dugu Wei Wei wouldn't be so bored that he gave the method to open the Devil Heaven Realm to others. There must be a deeper meaning behind it, but the descendants were stupid and didn't comprehend it. Currently, the Devil Heaven Realm was controlled by the entire hidden devil lineage and was sealed by a large formation. All the big shots of the hidden devil lineage had to agree to work together to undo the formation's restriction before they could enter. However, the conditions to open the Devil Heaven Realm were a little harsh, so it wasn't easy to enter. The Devil Heaven Realm was originally a secret realm. Every time it was opened, it required a large amount of energy as the energy source. Moreover, the more people entered, the more energy the Devil Heaven Realm would devour. To the Dugu Wei Wei of the past, this pitiful amount of energy was nothing. He could gather it with a wave of his hand. However, to others, even if they were in the true fire spirit refinement realm, it would be extremely strenuous for them to face this amount of energy. Therefore, the hidden devil lineage was actually using a 5-colored spirit crystal to activate the Devil Heaven Realm. However, the 5-colored spirit crystal was too precious, so the conditions to open the Devil Sky territory were very strict. Not to mention the small conditions, just the fact that everyone had to agree was very difficult. Moreover, the longer it was opened, the more power the 5-colored spirit crystal would consume. Therefore, the Devil Sky territory hadn't been opened for more than a decade. Everyone wanted to fight for this opportunity for their descendants or inheritors. Even if he couldn't obtain the legendary Dugu Wei Wei's inheritance, he would still be able to gain some insights and benefits from it. Now, Wei Shuya was going to give this opportunity to Chu Xiao, and he was going to give it to him for 24 hours. This was almost the same time as the time a martial Dao Grandmaster spent in it. How could they accept this? Wei Shuya looked around and said calmly, "What? Are you not convinced? Then tell me, who among the younger generation can guarantee that they can defeat Lin Yi?" Your descendants happen to be here. Let's compete on the spot. Whoever wins will get this opportunity. How about it? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present instantly fell silent. Because this was something that was utterly impossible. Although many people were not convinced by Chu Xiu, they were not confident that they could fight with Chu Xiu. At this time a low voice said, Wei Shuya, this is against the rules. How long has it been since Lin Yi officially joined our hidden devil lineage? You should know the meaning of the Devil Sky territory. It's unreasonable to open it to him now, and we won't be able to convince the public. An old voice echoed, That's right. Lin Ye's contribution is great, and he should be rewarded. However, the Devil Sky territory is of great importance. Unless you can find a rare treasure like the 5-colored spiritual crystal to support the operation of the secret realm's formation, it's a once-in-a-decade opportunity. Some disciples of the hidden devil lineage didn't get it even though they became middle-aged from the younger generation. It's unreasonable for Lin Yi to be ranked ahead of them. Wei Shuya said expressionlessly, Why is our hidden devil lineage like those righteous sects? Why do we always talk about this nonsense? Someone in the dark said, It's not about talking about reason, but about the rules. Breaking the rules is equivalent to breaking the stability of our hidden devil lineage. Therefore, we have to discuss the Devil Sky territory again. On the high platform, there was another round of discussion, but almost all of them were against Chu Xiu's idea. Although not all of them were against it, at least 80% of them did not support Chu Xiu's idea. Wei Shuya didn't say a word in the face of these strange objections. After the voices faded, Wei Shuya said coldly, Are you done? Looking around, Wei Shuya said indifferently, You seem to have forgotten one thing. In fact, I'm not the orthodox of the hidden devil lineage. In the past, when the 9 heavenly mountains and the 5 heavenly demons alliance raised the flag, they also looked for you to strengthen our momentum, but you all refused. You are afraid of death, but some people are not. My big brother and the other 3 fought with their lives in the righteous martial world, leaving the last backbone for our diabolism. Wei Shuya, don't think I've done anything wrong to the diabolism, but your actions today have disappointed me. Although I'm a useless old man, I still have some face. Lin Yi is still young, and he has a bright future ahead of him. One must be kind and honest. You can't help him, but you can't stop him from doing what he wants. You don't agree to open the Devil Sky realm. Fine, I'll take Lin Yi to Yi Xiaonan. I believe that the moon-worshipping cult's immortal ascension lake will be happy to let us use it. Hearing this, the expressions of the hidden devil lineage's big shots changed. One of them said quickly, Elder Wei, we can discuss this. Don't make trouble. Wei Shuya said indifferently, Do I look like I'm joking? Hidden devil and bright devil are both devils. How can the hidden devil lineage talk about reviving the Kunlun devil cult with this kind of virtue? It's better to be realistic and hug the moon-worshipping cult's thigh. Anyway, I don't have a deep relationship with the orthodox Kunlun devil cult. Many of the hidden devil lineage's experts felt a toothache because they couldn't figure out whether Wei Shuya was serious or just threatening them. In terms of origin, Wei Shuya belonged to the Devil Dao. However, he wasn't like the other hidden devil lineage's people, who had a long heritage that could be traced back to the Kunlun devil cult. In his early years, he was closer to a Devil Dao rogue cultivator. In the 9 heavenly mountains' 5 great devils gathering, the 5 of them were actually not from the orthodox Kunlun devil cult. Wei Shuya didn't have a deep relationship with the hidden devil lineage. Even the current Chu Wuji, Luo Sansong, and the others were mostly loyal to Wei Shuya, not the entire hidden devil lineage. Given Wei Shuya's strength and Lin Ye's status in Jianghu, if they really chose to join the moon-worshipping cult, Yi Xiaonan would probably personally go out to welcome them. To be able to get 2 experts, one old and one young, as well as Chu Wuji, a martial Dao grandmaster who was still in his prime, the grudges of the past were nothing to the moon-worshipping cult. Especially Yi Xiaonan. This person was a big shot in the demonic path. If Wei Shuya and Lin Yi came to join, with Yi Xiaonan's character, he would definitely not refuse. In the immortal Ascension Lake, the holy land of the moon-worshipping cult, legend had it that only the leader and the saintess were qualified to enter it to cultivate. If Lin Yi could join the moon-worshipping cult, it wouldn't be difficult for him to cultivate for 10 days or half a month with his status. Many of the demonic path big shots present secretly communicated. This matter was really tricky. If Wei Shuya and Lin Yi were really forced to join the moon-worshipping cult, then their hidden devil lineage would really become a joke. After a long while, someone said in a deep voice, Lin Yi can enter the devil sky realm, but 12 hours is too long. The consumption of 5-color spirit crystal is too high. You have to leave some opportunities for future generations, right? Ordinary martial artists who haven't reached the real pellet state can only enter the devil sky realm for 6 hours. How about we give Lin Yi 12 hours? Wei Shuya waved his hand and said, Okay. In fact, Wei Shuya's initial offer of 24 hours was just to leave room for negotiation. 12 hours was more than enough. Then let's do it. Open the devil sky realm. The big shots of the hidden devil lineage were not in a good mood. With their strength and status, it would be strange if they were in a good mood after being threatened in this way. Of course, Wei Shuya could only use this method once. The second time would make people feel disgusted. If it was the third time, perhaps he would completely break off with the entire hidden devil lineage. Devil Sky Realm was a mystic realm. The way to open it was in the hands of many big shots of the hidden devil lineage. In fact, the main thing was the outer ceiling array. Everyone must open the enchantment together. Many of the hidden devil clan's elders present made hand seals at the same time. In the center of the entire venue, a large formation with incomparably complicated patterns emerged. In the center, there was a strange 5-colored crystal stone that emitted an extremely dense power of heaven and earth. As everyone opened the array, a portal appeared in the array. Wei Shuya said in a deep voice, Go in and estimate the time. The array will close after 12 hours. After saying that, Wei Shuya waved his hand gently at Chu Xiao. A spiritual force poured into Chu Xiao's body. It was a piece of information, a detailed description of the inside of the Devil Sky Realm. It contained the experiences of previous people who had entered the Devil Sky Realm. It could help Chu Xiao quickly familiarize himself with the environment in the Devil Sky Realm and comprehend those things without wasting time. Chu Xiao nodded and walked straight into the portal. His eyes suddenly became pitch black. When he saw light again, a magnificent scene appeared in front of him. Dark clouds and demonic chi soared into the sky, the ground cracked, and lava erupted. A throne made of white bones extended from the ground to the sky, and a figure dressed in a black robe sat on the white bone throne. As the figure slowly raised his head, Chu Xiao was shocked to discover that the person's appearance was exactly the same as his. To be precise, it was exactly the same as his appearance in his previous life. Chapter 6:17. To suddenly see one's past life in an impossible place was undoubtedly a very frightening thing. However, when Chu Xiao wanted to take a closer look, the appearance of the black-robed figure on the white bone throne became blurred again, as though what he saw before was an illusion. Chu Xiao squinted his eyes. Everything was very wrong. Regardless of whether what he saw was an illusion or not, the scene in front of him was very wrong. Previously, Wei Shuya had given him information about the Devil Sky Realm. In the Devil Sky Realm, there should only be a great hall where Dugu Weiwei cultivated in seclusion. In the Great Hall, there should be some handwritten notes of Dugu Weiwei during his cultivation, and even some traces that he had casually drawn. Although those traces were casually drawn by Dugu Weiwei, for other warriors, these traces were priceless treasures. Many warriors could comprehend some things from these traces. What exactly was it that Chu Xiao was looking at? Why was what he saw different from others? At this moment, even an idiot could feel that Chu Xiao was connected to Dugu Weiwei. However, Chu Xiao couldn't figure out where the connection was. He didn't dare to think too much about it, because it was very frightening to think about it. In the original plot, Chu Xiao's current body was the devil cult leader who restored the Kunlun devil cult, which was equivalent to Dugu Weiwei's successor. Moreover, it only took him 20 years to reach this stage, which was very shocking. Whether Chu Xiao in this life could reach the achievements of his previous life, Chu Xiao himself didn't know. However, in the original plot, did Chu Xiao obtain the true inheritance of Dugu Weiwei to reach this stage, or was it because of something else? Could it be that he was walking the same path as in his previous life, and the plot had returned to the right track due to a freak combination of factors? Could it be that he could obtain the inheritance of Dugu Weiwei? After all, those people from the hidden devil lineage said that the Devil Sky Realm had Dugu Weiwei's inheritance. However, the figure on the white bone throne he saw was exactly the same as in his previous life. What was going on? The more Chu Xiao thought about it, the more chaotic his mind became. All kinds of thoughts came one after another, as if there was a kind of power eroding Chu Xiao's will. Gritting his teeth, Chu Xiu performed the heart demon rotation technique and the soul extinguishing technique at the same time, trying to stabilize his mind, but it didn't work at all. These two extremely powerful primordial spirit mystic arts could suppress mental strength, but right now, it was not Chu Xiu's mind that was in chaos, but his heart. At this moment, a strange power suddenly came from Chu Xiu's space secret box. Chu Xiu subconsciously opened the space secret box, and a stone slab suddenly floated out. Finally, it shattered, and a strange rhythm surged into Chu Xiu's body, finally suppressing Chu Xiu's chaotic mind. Chu Xiu took a deep breath. He remembered this thing. This stone slab was a stone slab that he took out from the heaven-reaching tower, and on it was a sentence of divination: "Heaven's fate is not defeated, the demon lord will not die." At that time, Chu Xiu suspected that this thing was related to Dugu Wei Wei, because although there were many demonic path overlords in the ancient times, there was no demon lord who unified the demonic path and suppressed the world. And after 10,000 years, the only one who could be worthy of this sentence was Dugu Wei Wei. However, the heaven-reaching tower was built 10,000 years ago, so how could the people of the heaven-reaching martial sect 10,000 years ago predict people 10,000 years later? This was also a mystery, but at that time, no one cared about it. Only Chu Xiu felt that this stone slab seemed to have some connection with him, so he kept it. He didn't expect that it would come in handy today, although Chu Xiu was still confused and didn't know what was going on. At this time, Chu Xiu looked at the figure sitting on the white bone throne. This is the undefeatable demon lord Dugu Wei Wei? The almost invincible Dugu Wei Wei? What is the connection between me and Dugu Wei Wei? At this time, the figure sitting on the white bone throne suddenly stood up, looked at Chu Xiu below, and revealed a trace of a smile that was unpredictable and contained countless emotions. That's right, until now, Chu Xiu couldn't see Dugu Wei Wei's face, as it was still a blur, but he could feel that Dugu Wei Wei was smiling at him. He could see him. This scene instantly caused Chu Xiu to be horrified. Because previously, he thought that this was just an image left by Dugu Wei Wei in the past, something used for inheritance. When the strength of some experts reached a certain level, even if they didn't specialize in spiritual secret techniques, it was very easy to leave such an image. But Chu Xiu had never heard that the image actually had a consciousness, and could see people. Although it was also possible that when Dugu Wei Wei left this image, he looked down, but Chu Xiu had a feeling that Dugu Wei Wei was looking at him, smiling at him. But before Chu Xiu could react, the surrounding scene had already changed. The white bone throne disappeared, and below it was a giant steel city. This giant steel city was built in the middle of a valley, and it looked extremely majestic. Huge crossbows were placed on top of the city gate tower, and there was also a large group of warriors wearing battle armor, holding weapons in their hands, standing on top of the city gate tower, filled with an iron-blooded and austere aura. A large flag was erected on top of the city gate tower, and the 3 words, Iron Emperor Castle, were written on it. Dugu Wei Wei's figure hovered in mid-air. He pointed at Chu Xiu, and then pointed at himself, meaning to take a closer look. At this time, within the giant steel city, a person shrouded in golden battle armor stepped through the air. On his back was a long spear, halberd, gold-plated phoenix wing drum, and a total of 9 long weapons. In his hand was a green dragon crescent blade, which he slashed towards Dugu Wei Wei. Dugu Wei Wei stretched out his hand, and a strange curved blade appeared in his hand. It was an extremely beautiful curved blade, with a pitch-black hilt, as if it was forged from demonic chi, but the blade was as resplendent as a full moon, illuminating the ages. This was an extremely resplendent and beautiful divine weapon, dazzling and dazzling. If it wasn't in Dugu Wei Wei's hand, no one would believe that this was actually a demonic blade stained with countless amounts of blood. As Dugu Wei Wei's blade slashed down, space and time seemed to stop under this blade. Like a mirror, the armored person and the space around him were sealed in the mirror. As Dugu Wei Wei's blade slashed down, the mirror shattered. The void cracked, and the mirror shattered. The person sealed in the mirror also let out an angry roar, but it was of no use. His seemingly gorgeous battle armor began to crack along with the mirror, and so did his body. Finally, with a loud bang, he dissipated into nothingness. Chu Xiu's eyes widened as he watched this scene. This should be the scene when Dugu Wei Wei suppressed the entire pugilistic world, and when he destroyed the enemy forces. Although this blade didn't have a majestic scene of the heavens collapsing and the earth sinking, it was terrifying enough to make people shudder. For a power to be able to stand against the Kunlun demon sect One could easily imagine how strong they were. This man who was clad in battle armor and had 9 weapons on his back was clearly an expert. But in the end, he was easily killed by a single slash from Dugu Weiwa. One could very well imagine how much power was contained in that single slash. However, the crux of the problem was that Chu Xiao couldn't understand it. What did Dugu Weiwei mean just now? Did he want Chu Xiao to see himself or to see his attack? Right now, Chu Xiao did see it, but his realm was too far away from Dugu Weiwei's realm. It could be said that the difference between them was like the clouds and the mud. Even if the current Chu Xiao were to see it a few hundred times, he still wouldn't be able to understand it. At this moment, there were changes in the Iron Emperor castle below. Seeing that person die tragically under Dugu Weiwei's blade, a series of mechanical sounds came from within the Iron Emperor castle. The mechanisms on the steel giant castle changed. Strange and complicated mechanisms quickly extended, covering the entire Iron Emperor castle, leaving only the exit of the crossbow bolts open. At this moment, the Iron Emperor castle looked like a huge steel castle. It looked incomparably sturdy. In the next moment, countless crossbow bolts burst out, attacking Dugu Weiwei. Moreover, these crossbow bolts weren't ordinary crossbow bolts. They were all inscribed with formation patterns, carrying different attributes and powers. Some had flames, some had frost. Dugu Weiwei took a step in the void, and in an instant, countless ripples bloomed. As the void trembled, the crossbow bolts all trembled and finally fell to the ground. Looking at the Iron Emperor castle, Dugu Weiwei put away his devil blade and gently waved his hand. Countless devil chi condensed in his hand, turning into the shape of a bow. At the same time, the devil chi transformed into 2 arms. One held the bow, while the other 3 held the bowstring. As the bow was pulled to a full moon, a black arrow condensed in the void. As Dugu Weiwa shot out this arrow, everything in its path was destroyed. Even the energy of heaven and earth was minced into nothingness, leaving behind a deathly stillness in the area. As the black arrow fell, it was like a drop of ink falling into water. The blackness began to spread, and the destruction began to spread. The seemingly incomparably sturdy Iron Emperor castle started to crumble under Dugu Weiwa's arrow. When the black crack spread throughout the entire Iron Emperor castle, a loud bang rang out, and the entire Iron Emperor castle directly shattered, transforming into countless metal fragments that fluttered in the air. In an instant, there was no sign of life. A single arrow destroyed an extremely sturdy iron castle covered in mechanical formations. This arrow of Dugu Weiwei was extremely shocking. However, the problem was that Chu Xiao still couldn't understand it. Since entering the Devil Sky realm, everything that had happened was too bizarre and there were too many mysteries. Chu Xiao had no time to digest it. However, it was okay to not think about these unexplainable things for the time being. Now, the saber and arrow that Dugu Weiwei used were definitely extremely powerful martial skills. Moreover, it was like a reenactment of the scene being displayed in front of Chu Xiao. This was definitely a great opportunity. Not to mention anything else, as long as he could comprehend a similar form, it would be enough to be a trump card for the current Chu Xiao. However, he couldn't even understand it, which was very embarrassing. Chapter 6:18. It was normal for warriors in the pugilistic world to gain some insights from watching experts fight. Chu Xiao had once observed Chen Qingdi's moves and realized that it was similar to Chen Qingdi's fist intent. Chu Xiao was confused about everything in the Devil Sky territory, but he knew that if he could learn this saber and arrow, it would definitely be of great benefit. Therefore, at this moment, Chu Xiao's Heaven Sun gazing at air skill was exerted to the extreme. Karma changed, and his mind kept replaying the saber and arrow that Dugu Weiwei had used before. He began to break down the essence of their power one by one. Whether it was useful or not, and whether he could understand it, Chu Xiao could only use the Heaven Sun gazing at air skill to forcibly imprint it in his mind. His mental strength was consumed crazily like flowing water, but he still couldn't understand it. The gap between the realms was too huge. At this moment, the Taoist connotation that Chu Xiao hadn't refined before suddenly began to break down and turned into a strange rhythm, combining with the Heaven Sun gazing at air skill. The Heaven Sun gazing at air skill was a standard Taoist technique that observed heaven and earth and looked at karma. The power of the Taoist connotation was released and integrated into the Heaven Sun gazing at air skill, making up for the consumption of Chu Xiao's mental strength. The 2 martial arts skills that he couldn't understand previously, after being broken down by the Heaven Sun gazing at air skill, gave Chu Xiu a very strange feeling. Of course, Chu Xiu still couldn't understand it. No matter how strong the heaven's sun gazing at air skill was, it couldn't directly analyze martial arts that were a few levels higher than Chu Xiu's. However, with the support of the Taoist connotation, the heaven's sun gazing at air skill was like a painting. The traces of the saber and arrow were completely imprinted in the bottom of Chu Xiu's heart and would never be forgotten. The power of Taoist connotation poured out like running water. Chu Xiu was completely immersed in that strange feeling. At this time, he did not know that everything around him began to collapse gradually, like a canvas soaked in water, losing its color. Dugu Weiwei floated in the air and looked at Chu Xiu. There was no expression on his blurry face. There were only 2 spots of light shining like a pair of eyes. But in the end, they turned into a black dot and dissipated into nothingness. Everything around him dissipated in the void, and Chu Xiu himself was immersed in the strange rhythm of the combination of the heaven's sun gazing at air technique and Taoist connotation, and he was unable to extricate himself. Heaven's sun gazing at air was very difficult to cultivate. Although using heaven's sun gazing at air required powerful mental strength, a powerful mental strength did not mean that heaven's sun gazing at air was powerful. Only by comprehending it could one improve heaven's sun gazing at air. After such a long time, most of Chu Xiu's cultivation methods had actually been cultivated to the peak realm, and even the fast and slow 9 words formulas had been combined into 9 seals. However, the cultivation of heaven's sun gazing at air was still stagnant. This time, by chance, heaven's sun gazing at air consumed the Taoist connotation, and at the same time, Chu Xiu's cultivation of heaven's sun gazing at air advanced a step further. At this time in the outside world, Chu Wuji stood behind Wei Shuya and transmitted his voice. "Senior Wei, how much do you think Chu Xiu will obtain in there?" Wei Shuya said, "You have also entered the Devil Heaven realm before. Won't you know the difference between you and Chu Xiu when you were in the oneness of heaven and man realm?" Chu Wuji shook his head and said, "If we compare it like this, it will be a blow to my confidence. In the past, I was arrogant when I was young, and my understanding of martial arts and the way of dealing with people were childish and shallow, far from what I am now. Back then, I only studied some of the words left by the sect master, and had some superficial understanding of the application of devil chi. Now that I think about it, it is a bit of a loss. If I enter the Devil Heaven realm after stepping into the martial arts Grandmaster realm, I guess I will be able to comprehend more things." In the past, Chu Wuji was ranked 5th on the Longhu leaderboard. After joining the Hidden Devil clan, he did many things for the clan, and with Wei Shuya's support, he was able to enter the Devil Heaven realm for 6 hours. Now, if he wanted to enter the Devil Heaven realm again, it would be extremely difficult. Just look at Chu Xiu. There were many people queuing up to enter the Devil Heaven realm, and the other big shots of the Hidden Devil clan would not allow him to enter the Devil Heaven realm twice. "Time's up, let Lin Yi come out," someone said. Wei Shuya nodded, and everyone activated the formation together. The door appeared again, and Chu Xiu was thrown out, and the radiance of the formation dissipated. Standing in the center, Chu Xiu shook his head. At this moment, Chu Xiu was still in a daze, and he had lost the concept of time. 12 hours had passed so quickly? Wei Shuya walked down the high platform and patted Chu Xiu. "What are you thinking about? Let's go." Wei Shuya was not in a hurry to ask what Chu Xiu had obtained in the Devil Heaven realm. There were many people here, and not everyone from the Hidden Devil clan was of one mind. It was better to talk about some things in secret. After leaving the secret realm, Wei Shuya brought Chu Wuji and Chu Xiu into a secret manner, and sent the others away. Then he asked Chu Xiu boy, how much did you gain in there?" Chu Xiu hesitated for a moment, and he did not know if he should tell Wei Shuya the truth. After all, it was too unusual for ordinary people. However, after thinking about it, Chu Xiu was prepared to tell him about the vision, but he had to hide some things. For example, he saw Dugu Weiwei as himself in his previous life, and Chu Xiu was not sure if he had seen it wrongly. There was also the strange connection between the image of Dugu Weiwei and himself, and the Devil Lord's immortal slate. These things were related to Chu Xiu's own secrets, and he did not intend to tell them. In fact, Chu Xiu had a lot of trust in Wei Shuya. This old man was one of the oldest in the demonic Tao. In fact, he was the one who truly considered the entire demonic Tao. He was not like the other big shots of the demonic Tao, who were more or less selfish. As long as Chu Xiu did not show any malice towards the Hidden Devil clan, Wei Shuya would definitely support him wholeheartedly. Apart from Wei Shuya, Master Tam Yuan could also be counted as such, but in the end, Chu Xiu still lied to him. Of course, Chu Xiu would only feel a little guilty, but his conscience would not hurt. In his opinion, Master Tam Yuan's inheritance would be given to someone like Li Yuan, rather than Master Tam Yuan's inheritance. However, some things were related to Chu Xiu's deepest secrets. Not to mention these seniors who had a good relationship with him, Chu Xiu did not intend to tell even his close relatives. Of course, Chu Xiu did not have any close relatives now. After sorting out his words, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I did not see those things that you told me. I only saw an image of Patriarch Dugu. In that image, Patriarch Dugu was fighting with a force called the Iron Emperor Castle. He killed an expert of the Iron Emperor Castle with one saber strike, then condensed a bow and arrow, and shot the Iron Emperor Castle. These two martial skills were too powerful, so after seeing them, I only had a superficial understanding and could not use them at all." That's right, Senior Wei. Did this scene really exist in the past? Wei Shuya and Chu Wuji, who had always been calm, were shocked by Chu Xiu's words. "What did you say? You actually saw the image left behind by Patriarch Dugu?" Although all the martialists who had entered the Devil Sky realm were aiming for Dugu Wei's inheritance, they knew that it was almost impossible to do so. Therefore, they could only hope to gain some superficial comprehension from the Devil Heaven realm. In the end, Chu Xiu entered the Devil Sky realm and actually saw the image left behind by Dugu Wei. Could the legend be true? Those who entered the Devil Sky realm did not have any reaction. Was it purely because they did not have enough potential or fortuitous encounters? Wei Shuya calmed himself down and looked at Chu Xiu with a peculiar gaze. "Great fortune, it's a great fortune. The image left behind by Patriarch Dugu is almost no different from an inheritance. Moreover, what you saw should be Patriarch Dugu's unique martial skills, the Misty Mortal Slash and the Triple City Extinguishing Arrow, also known as the Arrow of Destruction or Shiva's Arrow. What you saw was real. It was something that happened in the early days of my Kunlun Devil cult. The Iron Emperor Castle was also a top power in the pugilistic world. It was proficient in mechanical formations, weapon forging, and body tempering techniques. It was very powerful, and the Iron Emperor Castle was said to be invincible even with a 1,000,000-strong army. You can see the Iron Emperor Castle as the combination of the Black Tortoise Gate, the Divine Weapon Pavilion, and half of the Great Radiance Temple. Back then, the Iron Emperor Castle killed one of my Kunlun Devil cult's devil envoys and spoke arrogant words against my Kunlun Devil cult. Patriarch Dugu personally came and beheaded the Iron Emperor Castle's Lord Tai Qianjun with one blade. He destroyed the Iron Emperor Castle, which was said to be invincible with one arrow. The weapon that the cult master used was my Kunlun Devil cult's supreme devil weapon, called the Small Building Listens to the Spring Rain in One Night. Together with Patriarch Dugu's Misty Mortal Slash, it became Small Building Listens to the Spring Rain in One Night, Devil Blade Misty Mortal Slash. It was said that apart from Ning Xuanji, no one could block Patriarch Dugu's Devil Blade and Misty Mortal Slash. This poem was the strongest killing move in the pugilistic world back then. As for the Triple Link City Destruction Arrow, it was obtained by sect leader Dugu from a foreign sect. That sect was said to be related to the Buddhism sect. It was also very powerful, not inferior to the Taoist and Buddhist sections. That sect came from the outer domain and wanted to enter the Central Plains to preach. But before the Taoist and Buddhist sects could react, that sect offended the Kunlun Devil cult and was attacked by the cult master, who killed all the experts in the sect. The Triple City Extinguishing Arrow was obtained from that sect. Legend has it that it was the bow and arrow of one of the three main gods worshipped by the sect, the god of destruction, Shiva. It had once destroyed the Triple City built by the Azura clan with one arrow, so it was called the Triple City Extinguishing Arrow. In the past, that sect had to worship Shiva with blood and chi in exchange for the main god's power to use this arrow. But to the cult master, even the ancestors of the devil path were not qualified to be worshipped by him. So if it was the cult master, he could directly turn into Shiva and use this arrow. Chapter 619. The images left behind by Dugu Wei were images of him at his peak when he used his two strongest martial arts. It was a great opportunity, a great fortune. However, when Chu Xiu thought of all the strange things that happened in Devil Sky territory, as well as all the secrets related to himself, Chu Xiu couldn't be happy even if he obtained such a great fortune. On the contrary, Wei Shuya said excitedly, 3-city extinguishing arrow is fine. Although this martial art was created by Patriarch Dugu, its origin is above that sect. However, the ethereal red dust slash is one of the secret martial techniques of High Priestess Dugu. Now that you have obtained the ethereal red dust slash, from today onwards, you are High Priestess Dugu's true successor. Your status will even be higher than it is now. However, Wei Shuya shook his head and said, however, you better not use the misty mortal slash for the time being and expose the things you obtained in Devil Sky territory. The hearts of the hidden devil lineage have changed. Even if you obtain these things, the entire hidden devil lineage will not bow down to you and treat you as the true inheritor of Kunlun devil cult. Therefore, the most important thing for you now is to accumulate strength. As long as you have enough strength, this identity will be the icing on the cake, and it will be perfectly justifiable. It doesn't matter if you don't have this identity. No one will compete with you anyway. Wei Shuya was very clear about Chu Xiu's situation. However, he had never thought of obtaining the Misty Mortal Slash or 3-city extinguishing arrow, and the same was true for Chu Wuji. Neither of them were short-sighted people. Moreover, since this thing was left behind by Dugu Weiwei for Chu Xiu, once the images dissipated, no one would be able to see its charm. Therefore, even if Chu Xiu wanted to hand it over to them, he wouldn't be able to. Moreover, the two of them had actually entered Devil Sky territory, but they didn't see these things. Only Chu Xiu saw them, which proved that Chu Xiu was the one chosen by Dugu Weiwei. Some things didn't belong to them, but they forcibly seized them. The consequences might not be good. Chu Xiu smiled bitterly. I am too far away from Patriarch Dugu's realm. Even if I saw the images, I could only remember a few of them. I can't display them for the time being. Wei Shuya waved his hand and said, even if the images are similar, it is enough. The martial arts passed down by Patriarch Dugu, even if only 10% of its power is still amazing. Chu Xiu suddenly asked, by the way, Senior Wei, is there a portrait of Patriarch Dugu in devil lineage? Or do you know what Patriarch Dugu looks like? Chu Wuji said strangely, haven't you seen the images left behind by Patriarch Dugu? Don't you know what Patriarch Dugu looks like? Also, why are you asking this? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, in the images, Patriarch Dugu looks very blurry. I can't see his face at all. Now that I have inherited a part of Patriarch Dugu's martial arts, I am naturally curious about Patriarch Dugu. Wei Shuya thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, although Hierarch Dugu used to be the demon lord who commanded the entire Devil Dao, he didn't like to portray himself as a god. Naturally, he wouldn't have left behind any portraits or anything like that. Even if he did, it would have been lost after 500 years. Moreover, 500 years is too long. People from the same era as Patriarch Dugu are almost all dead. At least, no one in Devil Dao lineage has seen Patriarch Dugu's appearance. Maybe there are some experts in Jianghu, who used all kinds of strange methods to preserve their lifespan. However, there is no such person in Devil Dao lineage. Chu Xiu nodded, but he was still a little disappointed. Originally, he wanted to see if Dugu Weiwei looked like him. He wanted to see if the scene he saw before was a hallucination or an illusion. At this time, Chu Wuji said, by the way, didn't you ask Gong Shu Yuan to help you refine the human puppet last time? It just so happened that he had finished refining it. He also asked Lu Jin to inform you. However, you were on a mission at that time, so I stopped the news. Now you can come with me to see Gong Shu Yu and ask him to help you complete the human puppet. Chu Xiu nodded. He didn't think that Gong Shu Yuan's movements would be this fast. There was no need for Wei Shuya, this senior, to do the rest. Chu Wuji brought Chu Xiu to Gong Shu Yuan's residence. Gong Shu Yuan didn't have a fixed residence. Usually, wherever good materials appeared, Gong Shu Yuan would be there. Before, Gong Shu Yuan had been wandering around West Chu. At this time, in order to wait for Chu Xiu, he was also staying in a secret area of West Chu's Devil Dao lineage. After walking for a few days with Chu Xiu, Chu Wuji and Chu Xiu arrived at a large residence in a small town. Gong Shu Yuan was hiding underground in this residence. Entering the secret passage, the smell of blood assaulted their nostrils. Chu Wuji entered the underground secret area with a dark face. He saw that there were dim lights in the lobby and there were broken limbs everywhere, as well as some messy materials. It was like a scene of dismembered corpses. Seeing the originally neat lobby turned into this state by Gong Shu Yuan, Chu Wuji couldn't help saying with a dark face, Gong Shu Yuan. What did I say? If you want to do these things, find a secluded place and do whatever you want. This is a secret area that my Devil Dao lineage uses to gather in. If you make it look like a slaughterhouse, how will other people use it in the future? Gong Shu Yuan disdainfully curled his lips and said, So fastidious. You fellows have killed quite a few people and now you're looking down on corpses? Relax, I'll clean it up for you when I leave. Saying that, Gong Shu Yuan looked at Chu Xiao and complained, But I've been waiting for you for a long time. The human puppet is done. Come and take a look. Chu Xiao followed Gong Shu Yuan inside. Gong Shu Yuan waved his hand and a figure shrouded in a black robe walked over. The figure took off the black hat on his head and looked exactly like An Lianyan. However, An Lianyan was expressionless and had a dull expression. There was no vitality in his body. Gong Shu Yu said proudly, I've refined more than one martial Dao Grandmaster level puppet. You can rest assured about the quality. Later, I'll tell you how to control the human puppet. The human puppet must be controlled with spiritual power, but it doesn't consume much energy. With your spiritual power, it shouldn't be a problem. If you have a deeper control over your spiritual power, you can make the human puppet make all kinds of subtle movements and expressions. It's enough to pass off as real. Now, just take out your hungry ghost Dao incarnation and fuse it into the human puppet. This will be the container. However, you have to be careful. The true spirit of your hungry ghost Dao incarnation is very fierce. Don't let it devour too much. Otherwise, if the human puppet breaks, your hungry ghost Dao incarnation won't devour you. However, it might escape and break free from your control. Chu Xiao nodded and released his hungry ghost Dao incarnation. In an instant, the evil hungry ghost Dao incarnation appeared in the Great Hall and emitted an extremely evil aura that could devour everything. Even Chu Wuji was amazed. This thing was the embodiment of an evil being that had condensed to the extreme. It couldn't even be called a demon. It was simply an evil being. Gong Shu Yuan nodded and immediately began to take out a large number of formations. He performed a lot of manipulations that Chu Xiao couldn't even understand. In a short time, he successfully sealed the hungry ghost Dao incarnation into the human puppet. Wiping the sweat off his head, Gong Shu Yuan nodded and said, Done. Chu Xiao boy, I'll tell you in advance that I don't provide after-sales service. If there's any problem, you'll have to pay me more. Chu Xiao didn't get angry. He just nodded and said, No problem. With Gong Shu Yuan's style, it was actually pretty good to hand over the goods at the same time. Of course, with this kind of character, he was destined to be unable to get along in the Jianghu, even if it was the hidden devil lineage. Everyone liked to talk about favors and karma. Today you help me, I help you in the future. Returning favors back and forth seemed convenient, but it was actually troublesome. In fact, it was better to be like Gong Shu Yuan, saying one thing is one and two things is two. After getting the human puppet, Chu Xiao parted ways with Chu Wuji and temporarily returned to the Guanzhong torture room. After all, he was a member of the Guanzhong torture room. Although it wasn't a problem to leave temporarily, he was afraid that Guan Siyu would suddenly look for him. Of course, it didn't matter if he looked for her occasionally. There was still Mei Qinglian to help him in the Guanzhong torture room. Anyway, she was confident that she could deal with Guan Siyu. After Chu Xiao returned to the Guanzhong torture room, he didn't immediately appear in front of everyone. Instead, he carefully checked his body, but he still didn't find anything. His strength had greatly improved, and his combat power had greatly increased. His condition couldn't be better. At this moment, even if he were to challenge Zhang Qingzhen, who hadn't stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, Chu Xiao would dare to fight. However, what happened in the Devil Sky realm was like a dark cloud that shrouded Chu Xiao's heart, and it couldn't be dispersed. Especially when he had just stepped into the Devil Sky realm, a strange emotion eroded Chu Xiao's will. If it wasn't for the stone slab with "Invincible Destiny" written on it suddenly shattering and protecting Chu Xiao's will, who knew what might have happened next? However, the only thing he could be sure of was that this body of his was definitely connected to Dugu Weiwa. As for exactly what sort of secret was hidden within this, Chu Xiao was unable to see it, nor was he able to touch it. However, the only thing he was certain of was that the connection between him and Dugu Weiwa was definitely not as simple as being a mere inheritor. Rubbing his chin, Chu Xiao mumbled, Perhaps I should look for a divination master to do a divination for me? The path of divination had always been mysterious, and there were very few people who could cultivate this path to the extreme. For example, the Karma Meditation Hall's first seat of the Great Light Temple, and an expert from the Celestial Master's abode's Zhang family, who was of the same generation as the old Celestial Master, were all proficient in this path. Of course, not to mention that existences of that level wouldn't help Chu Xiao. Even if they would, Chu Xiao wouldn't dare to. Who knew what secrets they would divine? However, he had heard that there was a divination master named Yuan Ji in the northern Yen. He seemed to be quite famous, but he didn't know why he had come to West Chu recently. Should he look for him to have his divination done? Chapter 620. Chu Xiao just thought about it casually. After being away for such a long time, it was time for Chu Xiao to take care of the Guanzhong torture room. After coming out, Chu Xiao asked someone to find the Ghost Hand King and asked him if anything else had happened in Guanxi during this period. In fact, some of Chu Xiao's trusted subordinates in Guanxi had already noticed Chu Xiao's frequent disappearances, especially people like the Ghost Hand King, who usually helped Chu Xiao take care of miscellaneous affairs. He vaguely guessed that Chu Xiao's identity should not be that simple and somewhat mysterious. However, although the Ghost Hand King had guessed something, he did not say a word. An experienced guy like the Ghost Hand King knew when to say something and when not to. At the moment, they were all relying on Chu Xiao. As long as Chu Xiao could maintain his current strength and status, they did not care what secrets Chu Xiao had. Why would they ask for trouble? At this time, facing Chu Xiao's question, the Ghost Hand King shook his head and said, "Guanxi is peaceful. With the strength of the Guanxi torture hall, it is not a problem to suppress the entire Guanxi Wulin. Oh, by the way, some time ago, a mysterious man came to Guanxi. I sent someone to pay attention to him, but he has been cultivating in seclusion all the time. He is very mysterious." The Ghost Hand King carefully looked at Chu Xiao and said, "That man seems to be an expert in the martial Dao realm." Chu Xiao knew who the Ghost Hand King was talking about. That person should be Lu Hongye. Master Lu could not go back at all. At this time, he had become Lu Hongye, a swordsman of the Yinma clan, which was actually the best ending for him. In the Battle of Red Maple Valley, Chu Xiao killed so many people. He was the main culprit, and Lu Hongye was the #1 accomplice. If the news spread and the people in Jianghu knew that Lu Hongye was still alive, not only would he go down in history, but he would also be in an extremely dangerous situation. Therefore, he could only seek protection from the Yinma clan. Lin Ye's identity was a good choice. Of course, it was not Chu Xiao's suggestion for Lu Hongye to come to the Guanzhong torture room. He could not tell Lu Hongye his identity. Chu Xiao only asked Lu Hongye to choose a place to cultivate and lay low. After all, it was not long ago, it was not suitable for Lu Hongye to show up. That was why Lu Hongye chose the Guanzhong Punishment Hall, a neutral place, and coincidentally chose Guanxi. It could only be said that he was indeed fated with Chu Xiao. He casually waved his hand and said, "I know, but you don't have to worry about this person. Withdraw all the people monitoring him. He is not an enemy." Judging from Chu Xiao's tone, the Ghost Hand King seemed to know this man. Although Chu Xiao often brought people back to Guanxi, such as Lu Fengxian, Feng Buping, and the others, they were either friends of Chu Xiao, or they were not that strong. Now, official Chu even knew a martial Dao master? The Ghost Hand King did not ask further. He continued, "There's no movement in Guanxi, but there's some movement in the torture chamber's headquarters." Chu Xiao raised his brows and said, "What movement?" The Ghost Hand King said, "I heard that the head of the punishment division is in seclusion for a long time. He might not come out for several years. Therefore, all the affairs of the punishment division will be handled by the second head, Feng Sha, and the third head, Si Ming. Moreover, the punishment division is planning to recruit a large number of people. Some of them are outsiders. Of course, priority will be given to the constables in the 4 branches of the Guanzhong torture room. There are also some constables in the Guanxi division who are tempted to join the punishment division. Sir, should we suppress them? There's no need for that. We don't have to stop them if they want to seek a future." Chu Xiao rubbed his chin. He seemed to know what was going on. Guan Siyu did not want others to know that An Liuonian was dead. In Xiaofan heaven, nobody had seen An Liuonian being killed. Moreover, An Liuonian had always kept a low profile. Therefore, to a certain extent, Although An Liuanian was a martial Dao master, as long as he did not take the initiative to reveal his identity, he was just a nobody in the pugilistic world. Therefore, after Xiaofan, there was no news from the pugilistic world that An Liuanian, the head of the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall's punishment division, had been killed. Only then did Guan Xiu feel at ease. She released the news that An Liuanian was in seclusion, creating the illusion that there were still 3 martial Dao masters in the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall. Of course, Chu Xiu wasn't going to expose this. After all, he was now a member of the Guanzhong torture room and had to rely on the Guanzhong torture room to hide his identity. Perhaps Chu Xiu would do things that harmed others to benefit himself, but Chu Xiu could not be bothered to do things that harmed others without benefiting himself. By the way, sir, there's news from the main hall. They're preparing to redistribute the punishment division and the powers of the 4 branches. They'll need you to make a trip to the main hall soon. I was the one who received the news, but you were still in seclusion at that time, so I did not disturb you. Chu Xiu nodded. This was within his expectations. An Liuanian's death might not necessarily be a bad thing for Guan Xiu. In the past, when An Liuanian was still around, he controlled more than half of the punishment division's power. Even Guan Xiu could not interfere. However, now that he was dead, Feng Sha could not do anything alone. It was time for a change in the distribution of power in the Guanzhong torture room. After asking the ghostly Hand King for the time, Chu Xiu headed straight to the Guanzhong torture room headquarters. It had been a long time since Chu Xiu had visited the Guanzhong torture room headquarters. This time, all the martial artists who saw Chu Xiu, be they from the main hall, the branches, or the punishment division, were extremely respectful to Chu Xiu. The number 1 on the Longhu leaderboard was publicly acknowledged by the entire pugilistic world as an outstanding talent of the younger generation. In the past, this honor mostly belonged to the disciples of the major sects, especially the Taoist, demonic, and Buddhist lineages, as well as the 5 major sword sects. In the past few centuries, 80% of those who were qualified to be number 1 on the Longhu leaderboard were from these few sections. In this generation, it was finally their Guanzhong torture room's turn. This was an honor that the Guanzhong torture room had never achieved since its establishment. Therefore, it was very normal for Chu Xiu to be respected. The meeting would only begin the next day. As this matter was of great importance to the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu arrived at the torture division headquarters a day earlier. The other 3 torturers had also arrived earlier. Among them, the Guannan torturer, Chu Simo, was extremely polite to Chu Xiu. With Chu Xiu's current strength and status, he was indeed no longer in the same realm as them. Even the strongest among them, Xiao Yi, was the same. He was very polite to Chu Xiu. As for Yin Batong, who had a grudge against Chu Xiu, he did not even dare to say a word of nonsense when he saw Chu Xiu. He could not wait to avoid him. Fortunately, with the protection of the Guanzhong torture room's laws, Chu Xiu could not kill his colleagues. Otherwise, Yin Batong could not guarantee that he would still be alive. When entering the headquarters, Chu Xiu happened to bump into Feng Sha. In fact, the grudge between Feng Sha and Chu Xiu was even greater. This was because Chu Xiu had snatched his opportunity to enter Xiaofan. Others might be afraid of Chu Xiu, but Feng Sha was a martial Dao grandmaster. Even if he had no confidence in defeating Chu Xiu, he would not be afraid of Chu Xiu. However, Feng Sha's current behavior was a little strange. Facing Chu Xiu, Feng Sha's reaction should be anger. However, at this moment, Feng Sha gave Chu Xiu a fake smile and said, "Number 1 on the Longhu leaderboard, Chu Xiu. It's really worth it for you to enter Xiaofan this time. I didn't expect the Guanzhong torture room to produce such an outstanding talent like you. This is really gratifying and worth celebrating." Chu Xiu frowned slightly. Feng Sha's sarcasm made him feel a little strange. Given Feng Sha's personality, Chu Xiu would not feel so awkward if they exchanged a few blows. Raising his eyebrows, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Why? Are you unconvinced, Leader Feng?" Feng Sha said indifferently, "I wouldn't dare to be unconvinced. After all, you, Chu Xiu, have a backer. However, you will soon find out that your backer is actually unreliable." With that, Feng Sha turned and left, leaving Chu Xiu puzzled. Who was Feng Sha talking about? His backer? Guan Xiu? Just as Chu Xiu was pondering, Mei Qinglian's voice came from behind Chu Xiu. "Since you've come to the torture room headquarters, Won't you come to my place for a chat? Chu Xiao turned around and said, Of course, this isn't the place to talk. Bringing Chu Xiao to her room, Mei Qinglian waved her hand to isolate the sound. Then she sized up Chu Xiao with a slightly astonished gaze. I really didn't expect you to complete this matter so beautifully. It simply exceeded my expectations. Did old Senior Wei give you a reward? Opening the Devil Sky Realm for 12 hours. How's that? Mei Qinglian was shocked. Devil Sky Realm. It's actually 12 hours. Tiske. Senior Wei really treats you well. That group of conservative old fellows actually agreed? Chu Xiao said indifferently. They didn't agree before. However, old Senior Wei threatened to take me to the moon-worshipping cult. They had no choice but to agree. Mei Qinglian revealed a smile and said, Old Ginger is spicier. Old Senior Wei's move is not bad. Looking at Chu Xiao, Mei Qinglian raised her elegant brows and said, Since old Senior Wei gave you a reward, I won't mistreat you. You killed that fella and Lionian. You should know why Guan Siyu asked you guys to come. Are you interested in the position of the head of the punishment division? Chu Xiao was puzzled. You want me to fight for the position of the head of the punishment division? What about the Guanxi region? Actually, the position of the head of the punishment division was no longer attractive to Chu Xiao. What he wanted was the entire Guanzhong torture room. Mei Qinglian said casually, Your subordinates are quite strong. Just leave it to them. Since we are going to take over the Guanzhong torture room, we have to obtain such an important place as the head of the punishment division. Chu Xiao rubbed his chin and said, Since that's the case, we still have to obtain the most authority. If it's possible, I even want to get rid of Feng Sha. At this point, Chu Xiao had a feeling that something was wrong. He kept feeling that Feng Sha was a little strange. Because of the heaven sun gazing at air spell, Chu Xiao was a little sensitive to certain things that concerned him. Now, he had an indescribable strange feeling. Chapter 621. Although the Guanzhong torture room did not have a long history, the distribution of authority had always been rather reasonable. The 4 branches were in charge of guarding the 4 regions of Guanzhong. The main branch was in charge of handling all sorts of intelligence from these 4 regions, analyzing them, and providing support. As for the Criminal Investigation Bureau, they were the strongest combatants in the Guanzhong torture room. They were only in charge of simple and direct killings. It was precisely because of this tight system that the Guanzhong torture room was able to prosper and become stronger. The Guanzhong torture room was said to be in between the imperial court and the pugilistic world precisely because of this system. However, because of An Lionian's death, Guan Siyu wanted to reclaim his authority. Thus, there was quite a commotion in the Guanzhong torture room. Not only did Chu Xiao and the other torture officers and the head of the Criminal Investigation Bureau attend the meeting, but there were also some powerful patrol envoys under him, like the Ghostly Hand King and Tang Ya. There were also some powerful secret agents who belonged to the Criminal Investigation Bureau. In the end, the scale of the meeting was a little too large. There were close to 100 people participating. The meeting hall could not accommodate them all, so everyone could only move to the courtyard in the center of the main branch to carry out the meeting. Guan Siyu sat on the chair in front of him, and Mei Qinglian sat by his side. She had the appearance of a wife following her husband's lead. Xiao Yi and the others were already used to Guan Siyu bringing Mei Qinglian with him every time he held a meeting. However, some of the martialists who had not interacted with Guan Siyu for the first time found it strange that old Master Guan had such a side to him. Of course, these thoughts only flashed through their minds. No one was foolish enough to step forward and say anything. Guan Siyu looked around and said in a deep voice, I believe everyone already knows that the head of the Criminal Investigation Bureau, An Lionian, is in seclusion. He might not come out for many years. Hence, we need to reorganize the Criminal Investigation Bureau. We need to get rid of some of the people who are doing nothing and promote some capable constables into the Criminal Investigation Bureau. After Guan Siyu said that, he subconsciously glanced at Feng Sha, as Guan Siyu's words had been directed at Feng Sha. If An Lionian was dead, then so be it. If Guan Siyu only wanted to divide the authority An Lionian left behind, it would be very easy. She just needed to change a few people. But now, Guan Siyu wanted to reorganize the entire Criminal Investigation Bureau. Who else was this targeting if not him? Hence, Guan Siyu thought that Feng Sha would definitely be prepared to refute or even fly into a rage. Who would have thought that Feng Sha would only show a cold smile and not say a word? Although Guan Siyu was a little puzzled as to why Feng Sha was so calm today, he did not ask. Instead, he continued to assign a few other tasks and said in a low voice, "All Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall martial practitioners who wish to join the Punishment Division can come to the Punishment Division to register. However, they must pass the Punishment Division's test before they can join. The various disciplinary officers are not allowed to stop them." Xiaoyi spread his hands indifferently. Actually, it was not just him. Even the petty Yin Batong did not plan on stopping him. In the underworld, killing one's parents, stealing one's wealth, and preventing one from improving were the biggest taboos. If their subordinates wanted to join the Criminal Investigation Bureau, they could let them do so. Those who did not have the willpower were not considered true confidants. Another reason was that if these people who joined the Criminal Investigation Bureau could make a name for themselves, they would naturally have to respect their superiors who had given them this opportunity. Hence, this was a good opportunity to expand their connections. Guan Siyu continued. The head of the Criminal Investigation Bureau is temporarily unable to manage it. Hence, second leader Feng Sha is naturally in charge. However, I intend to change the third leader of the Criminal Investigation Bureau to Chu Xiao. Si Ming will be the fourth leader. As soon as this was said, everyone present was in an uproar. No one had expected that Guan Siyu would actually give Chu Xiao such a high position. Following in Lionian's seclusion, Chu Xiao received the best treatment in the Criminal Investigation Bureau, apart from second leader Feng Sha. He could practically get anything he wanted. This naturally attracted the dissatisfaction and jealousy of some martialists. Si Ming, who had been replaced, did not say anything. He was Guan Siyu's true confidant, so he did not care much about other things. Furthermore, Si Ming's authority had not changed. Without an Lionian, Chu Xiao was now the second leader, while Si Ming was still the third. Hence, in general, Si Ming did not suffer a loss. As soon as Guan Siyu finished speaking, Feng Sha immediately stood up and said coldly, "Hallmaster, I advise you to think twice before making such an important decision. Since when has the Criminal Investigation Bureau allowed an outsider to wield such great power?" Guan Siyu frowned and said, "Chu Xiao is the disciplinary officer of the Guanzhong torture room. He is an elite of the Guanzhong torture room. When did he become an outsider?" Feng Sha sneered and said, "Hallmaster, how long has it been since we joined the Guanzhong torture room? How long has it been since Chu Xiao joined the Guanzhong torture room? For so many years, we have worked our hearts out for the Guanzhong torture room. Who here is not more experienced than Chu Xiao? If he is not an outsider, then what is he? He is in charge of the Guanxi area alone, and he is also the leader of the Criminal Investigation Bureau. With such glory, Chu Xiao's position in the Guanzhong torture room is second only to you, Hallmaster. What right does Chu Xiao have?" Feng Sha's words actually echoed the thoughts of many of the Guanzhong torture room's martialists. The younger generation of martialists looked at Chu Xiao with reverence and envy. They saw Chu Xiao as their idol. However, to the older generation of martialists, Chu Xiao, a junior, was able to sit in such a position. Wasn't the hall master too biased toward him? Mei Qinglian said calmly, "Leader Feng, the master wants to reorganize the Guanzhong torture room's power division. It is actually to get rid of some people who don't do anything. If experience is useful, then what's the use of ability? Everyone in the pugilistic world has seen Chu Xiao's ability. He is #1 on the Longhu leaderboard. This is an absolute glory. In other sects, Chu Xiao's position is second only to the sect master. Now that he is in the Guanzhong torture room, is it too much to give him an additional leader position? Leader Feng, don't disappoint us." Guan Siyu waved her hand and said, "Madam is right. All right, let's do this. Feng Sha, although you are now the second in command of the criminal division, and Lionian isn't here, you are carrying out the duties of the big leader. You don't have to feel wronged." Feng Sha stood up and said coldly, "But I still refuse to accept this. Hallmaster, you have changed. Ever since this demoness came to the Guanzhong torture room, you have changed. She bewitched you to protect Chu Xiao and promoted Chu Xiao, a junior who just joined the Guanzhong torture room, to such an honorable position. It won't be long before most of the power in the Guanzhong torture room will be nibbled away by them. When that time comes, will the Guanzhong torture room be Madame Mei's Guanzhong torture room, or will it be Master Guan's Guanzhong torture room?" The moment Feng Sha said this, everyone present was stunned. Everyone stared at Feng Sha with their mouths agape. Was this guy crazy? Even in Liaonian wouldn't have dared to say such things in the past. Feng Sha was a veteran of the Guanzhong torture room, and he was a very slippery person. Previously, during the struggle between in Liaonian and Guan Siyu, he hadn't stood on either in Liaonian's or Guan Siyu's side. He had only guarded his portion of power. As long as he did his job well, then everything would be fine. He rarely spoke much. But now, his words were practically shedding all pretense of cordiality with Mei Qinglian and Guan Siyu. However, to be honest, what Feng Sha said actually made sense. They could also sense that Mei Qinglian's words seemed to carry more weight in the Guanzhong torture room. In the beginning, Mei Qinglian was only Madame Guan, and she didn't participate in the affairs of the Guanzhong torture room. But later, every time there was a meeting in the Guanzhong torture room or something important, Guan Siyu would bring Mei Qinglian along. It was even to the extent that Mei Qinglian could openly voice her suggestions on some major matters, and Guan Siyu still listened to her. This caused everyone to be unable to help but wonder who exactly the Guanzhong disciplinary hall belonged to. There was also Chu Xiu. When he had first joined the Guanzhong torture room, although Chu Xiu was also on the Longhu list, he didn't have such strength and fame. But at that time, Chu Xiu was already extremely daring. He even dared to publicly kill his own superior and go against the laws of the Guanzhong torture room. If Mei Qinglian hadn't spoken up to protect Chu Xiu, he would have been severely punished by the Guanzhong torture room. Instead of saying that Chu Xiu was Guan Siyu's man, it would be better to say that Chu Xiu was Mei Qinglian's man. Guan Siyu's expression was gloomy. He suddenly stood up and said coldly, "Feng Sha, are you crazy? You've been in the Guanzhong torture room for a long time. We even worked together in the past. I know you're feeling a little uncomfortable. Step down. I can pretend that nothing happened today." Mei Qinglian put on an aggrieved expression and said, "I just saw that master was working too hard, so I wanted to do something for the Guanzhong torture room. I didn't expect that I would be misunderstood as wanting to interfere with the power of the Guanzhong torture room. Well then, I'll stay in my boudoir from now on, lest it affects master's reputation." Feng Sha pointed at Mei Qinglian and said with a sneer, "Which you're still pretending here. When we first met you, we were all fooled by you." The dignified holy virgin of the Shadow Demon sect, who is also a famous figure in the Yinma clan, is actually pretending to be a weak girl from a humble family. Amazing, amazing. Your acting skills are much better than your strength. Feng Sha turned his head to Chu Xiu and said with a sneer, "Chu Xiu, you didn't expect this, did you? The person you're relying on is actually a wicked demoness with evil intentions. I've said that your backer is unreliable." Everyone present looked at Feng Sha with their mouths agape. What did he say? Madame Mei was the holy virgin of the Shadow Demon sect? A demonic witch? Or a martial arts master? How was that possible? The Shadow Demon sect only existed in name and was not famous in the Jianghu. Therefore, some people present had not even heard of the Shadow Demon sect and thought that Feng Sha was talking nonsense out of anger. However, they did not realize that the pitiful expression on Mei Qinglian's face had become somewhat distorted in an instant. Chapter 622. Feng Sha's words caused everyone present to fall into absolute silence. Mei Qinglian had been in the Guanzhong torture room for many years. How did she suddenly become the holy maiden of the hidden devil faction? The Guanzhong torture room had survived in the cracks of the three countries. In fact, it wasn't a righteous path, nor was it a demonic path. However, they definitely wouldn't lean towards the demonic path. If Mei Qinglian was really the holy maiden of the demonic path, what was she planning after hiding in the Guanzhong torture room for so many years? Just thinking about it made people feel terrified. Mei Qinglian raised her head. She still had that pitiful look on her face. She said in a sorrowful voice, "Lord Feng, what are you saying? How did I become the holy maiden of the demonic path?" Feng Sha said coldly, "Demoness, you don't have to continue pretending. If I didn't have concrete evidence, would I say it in front of everyone?" Just as Feng Sha was about to say something, Guan Siyu suddenly raised her head and said expressionlessly, "Get out." Feng Sha was stunned for a moment, as if he hadn't reacted yet. He looked at Guan Siyu in shock and said, "Hall Master, I really have evidence to prove that this demoness is the holy maiden of the Yin demon faction. If I've wronged her, I'm willing to commit suicide on the spot. When everyone present saw Feng Sha say such words, they were almost certain that Feng Sha really had evidence. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said it so resolutely and gambled with his life. Guan Xiyu wasn't a soft-hearted person. His actions today could be considered to have shed all pretense of cordiality with Guan Xiyu. If he was lying, then there really wouldn't be a place for him in the Guanzhong torture room after this. However, Guan Xiyu didn't give him a chance to speak. She only said coldly, "I told you to get out. Didn't you hear me? Since you don't want the position of the actual controller of the arrest division, then let someone else take it. The Guanzhong torture room may lack everything, but it doesn't lack people." Feng Sha still wanted to say something, but a loud laugh came from outside the main hall. "Chief Feng, you still don't understand. What did I tell you before? This Hallmaster Guan of your Guanzhong torture room isn't an idiot. An idiot wouldn't be able to run the shaky Guanzhong torture room to this extent. Mei Qinglian's identity could be hidden from others, but after being together for so long, how could she hide it from Siyu? The Yin Demon Master's great enchantress art was indeed miraculous. Other mental secret arts affected the spirit, but the great enchantress art affected the heart. However, for those with a strong will, it was impossible to resolve. Master Guan is known as the Iron Judge. He seems to have a heart of stone, but in reality, his heart is very soft. Everyone present immediately looked back and saw a group of people walking in from outside the courtyard. The leader was a middle-aged man with a small mustache and dressed in a refined manner. He exuded a scholarly aura, but this person had the strength of a martial arts master. Beside him was an old eunuch with the strength of the unity of heaven and man realm. Chu Xiu also knew this old eunuch. It turned out that he was the personal eunuch of Eastern Qi's crown prince, Lu Longji, Eunuch Chen. He had dealt with Chu Xiu a few times, but he had always suffered at the hands of Chu Xiu. There was a group of experts behind the two of them, and the weakest was in the Three-Flower Realm. This group of people were actually the elites of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army. Seeing Chu Xiu, Eunuch Chen even gave Chu Xiu a sinister smile. "Yang Gongdu, what do you want? Who gave you the guts to break into my Guanzhong torture room?" Guan Xiyu looked at the middle-aged scholar coldly, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. When they heard Guan Xiyu, everyone present here suddenly recalled exactly who this person was. He was the poison dragon warrior, Yang Gongdu, who ranked 45th on the list. Although this person was a martial arts master, he was ranked on the list not because of his martial arts, but because of the shocking things he had done. Yang Gongdu was a scholar who had studied since he was a child. He went from Western Chu to Northern Yan, and then to Eastern Qi. He took the exam in 3 countries consecutively for 20 years, but he failed all of them. He was even forced to rely on being a guest and a teacher to pass his days. If someone else had encountered such a blow, they would have probably given up a long time ago. However, extraordinary people naturally had extraordinary things. In Yang Gongdu's dictionary, the word give up did not exist. This person was extraordinarily stubborn about power. However, what Yang Gongdu learned and what the imperial examinations were testing were 2 different concepts. He was good at scheming, politics, and the art of being an emperor. No one would test such things in the imperial examinations. In addition, Yang Gongdu was extremely stubborn. He disdained learning the Confucian classics, benevolence, and morality that he looked down on. Therefore, he could only continue to fail. Later, when Yang Gongdu became a middle-aged man and became a teacher for a wealthy family, he felt that his physical strength had declined. Therefore, he learned some martial arts from the head guard of the wealthy family. Unexpectedly, his talent in the martial Tao was extremely astonishing. After practicing ordinary martial arts for a few months, he was stronger than the head guard who had been practicing for decades. By a freak combination of factors, Yang Gongdu began to cultivate the martial Tao. His journey was smooth, and he cultivated to the realm of a martial arts master. However, he himself hated using simple and violent means to solve problems. He had always thought of himself as a scholar. He was full of strategies and the art of being an emperor, and he was prepared to sell them to the royal families. In the beginning, Yang Gongdu relied on his own strength to become an official in the Northern Yan. He was a general in the military. When the Northern Yan Wulong Emperor joined forces with the Northern Yan Jianghu to resist the Eastern Qi, he put in a lot of effort. He cooperated with the large Northern Yan sects to help. However, because he intervened in the fight for the throne, he made some mistakes and was pushed to the bottom by the Wulong Emperor. He was even hunted down by the Northern Yan royal family. Later, Yang Gongdu moved to West Chu. He wanted to persuade the West Chu royal family to use the local martial arts forces to strengthen their influence. Under his secret plans, he did indeed cause a lot of trouble in West Chu. In the end, he offended the Celestial Master Mansion and the moon-worshipping cult at the same time. In the face of such powerful strength, even if he had a stomach full of schemes, it was useless. In the end, he could only be forced to leave West Chu. However, no matter what, Yang Gongdu's ability to cause trouble was recognized as strong. His schemes were strange and his methods were ruthless. He had the power of a dragon, but unfortunately, he was a poisonous dragon. If the Son of Heaven used him properly, he would be a great help. Otherwise, Yang Gongdu, this poisonous dragon, would turn against his master. When Yang Gongdu was forced to leave West Chu, there was no trace of him. Who knew that he would be with Gonggong Chen at this time? Obviously, he had already taken refuge with the Crown Prince, LV Longji. At the beginning, LV Longji wanted to subdue the rogue cultivator forces in the southwest and open up the West Chu trade route. This was in line with the intentions of the Eastern Qi Emperor. If it succeeded, the strength of LV Longguang's subordinates would increase greatly. At the beginning, Chu Xiu was still wondering who gave him this idea. LV Longguang's ability level was very mediocre. Now that things were clear, the person who gave LV Longguang the idea should be Yang Gongdu. Now that Yang Gongdu had appeared here, with this person's personality, it was likely that he had some scheme up his sleeves and was preparing to execute it. This person always caused chaos wherever he went. He was definitely a dangerous person. Yang Gongdu took out a folding fan and casually fanned himself. With a smile on his face, he said, "Hall Master Guan, please calm down. This time, I did not trespass into the Guanzhong torture room. It was leader Feng Sha who invited me here. Originally, I did not want to interfere with the internal affairs of the Guanzhong torture room. However, this matter concerns the Hidden Devil Factions group of demonic cultivators. Since someone invited me, how could I refuse?" Guan Xiu looked at Feng Sha. There was a rare trace of killing intent in his eyes. When Feng Sha saw Guan Xiu's gaze, he immediately felt a chill from the bottom of his heart. He subconsciously took a step back. At this moment, Yang Gongdu took a step forward and cut off Guan Xiu's killing intent. He chuckled and said, "Hall Master Guan, don't be anxious. The good show has not begun yet. Are you already busy killing people to silence them? It's a bit early." As he spoke, Yang Gongdu casually cupped his hands towards Mei Qinglian and said, "Yin Demon Sect's Holy Maiden, I have long heard of your name. Back when the Yin Demon Sect was still around, you were very low-key. Many people have heard of your title, but they do not know what you look like. You don't even know your name. The Yin Demon Sect has been destroyed for so long. I reckon that even the enemies of the Yin Demon Sect in the past believe that you are already dead and that the Yin Demon Sect no longer exists. However, it is a pity that no one can truly be invisible under the sun. Your identity has long been known by others and has even been revealed. Furthermore, it is someone from your Hidden Devil faction. Of course, I will not reveal who this person is. Holy Maiden, there is no need to be in a hurry to refute me. Words are no proof. Since I dared to come here, I definitely have evidence on me. The Yin Demon Sect's enchanted maiden technique is very peculiar. It affects one's mind. It just so happens that I have a heart testing stone produced in the Western region. It is very sensitive to techniques like the enchanted maiden technique. If Holy Maiden has the guts, then hold the heart testing stone and see if there are any interesting changes within it." The pitiful expression on Mei Qinglian's face gradually disappeared. She had once again been deceived by someone. Moreover, it was her own people who had betrayed her. If she were to find this person, she would definitely dismember his body into 10,000 pieces. Feng Sha hurriedly said, "Hall Master, I know that you have been bewitched by this demoness enchanted maiden technique. That is why you have always subconsciously stood on her side and been driven by her. Now that we have killed this demoness, my Guanzhong torture room will still be the Guanzhong torture room." Mei Qinglian also let out a long breath. Demonic qi surged around her, and a powerful aura bloomed. It was stronger than Yang Du's, stronger than Feng Sha's, and even weaker than Guan Xiu's. This show couldn't go on any longer. The enchanted maiden technique could only subtly influence a person's mind. This kind of influence was like flowing water, silently moisturizing things. However, it could not really turn a person into a puppet. She had already been completely exposed. There was no need to continue acting. Just as Feng Sha was excitedly rubbing his palms and preparing to attack, Guan Xiyu suddenly took a step forward. She formed a seal with her hands, moving mountains and filling seas. A seal turned into a boundless power that crushed towards Feng Sha. Feng Sha's face immediately revealed a stunned expression. Was the Hall Master completely controlled by the enchanted maiden technique? That Mei Qinglian had already admitted her identity. Why did she still attack him? Chapter 623. Guan Xiyu's sudden attack stunned Feng Sha. He couldn't understand it. It was normal for Guan Xiyu to attack him in order to protect his woman. The Iron Judge also had his own selfish motives. But now, they had already exposed that witch, Mei Qinglian's identity. She was hiding in the Guanzhong torture room and by Guan Xiyu's side. She was clearly plotting something. In the end, Feng Sha didn't attack Mei Qinglian but attacked himself. What was the meaning of this? Feng Sha was stunned, but Yang Gongdu wasn't. Yang Gongdu waved the folding fan in his hand, and his stellar energy transformed into a sharp blade that swept over. Clanging sounds rang out as it blocked in front of Feng Sha. Although he managed to block Guan Xiyu's attack, Yang Gongdu was forced back a few steps. Yang Gongdu rubbed his numb wrist and chuckled. The Divine Nine Transformations really lives up to its reputation. Feng Sha seemed to react at this moment. He looked at Guan Xiyu in disbelief and said, "Hall Master, why did you attack me? Could it be that you've really been completely controlled by that witch?" Yang Gongdu sneered. "Chief Feng, what did I say before? Don't you understand? Hall Master Guan wasn't bewitched by Mei Qinglian from the beginning. He knew of Mei Qinglian's identity even before we did." Mei Qinglian's eyes immediately widened. She suddenly raised her head to look at Guan Xiyu and said in disbelief, "You knew of my identity from the beginning? The witch art has never been effective?" A bitter smile appeared on Guan Xiyu's face. She nodded and said, "From the first day you came to my side and tried to use the enchanted maiden technique to influence me, I noticed it. Lord Chu Kuanga once left behind many strange cultivation techniques. Among them was a cultivation technique used to restrain mental techniques and guard one's heart. Your witch art isn't effective against me." Mei Qinglian was silent for a while before she said, "Then why didn't you expose me all these years? Why were you so submissive to me as if you'd fallen for my witch art?" Guan Xiyu sighed and said, "In the beginning, I only suspected your identity, so I wanted to keep you by my side to see exactly what your goal was. I wanted to see which power had ill intentions towards my Guanzhong torture room. It was just the right time to draw the snake out of its hole and capture them all in one fell swoop. But in the end, can't you feel my feelings, madam? I've always loved you." A look of disbelief appeared on Mei Qinglian's face. She had always thought that Guan Xiyu was obedient to him because the enchanted girl technique was effective. The enchanted girl technique was extremely sensitive to the manipulation of people's hearts. If Guan Xiyu had evil intentions towards him, the enchanted girl technique would definitely detect it. Therefore, she dared to boast in front of Chu Xiu that she could deal with Guan Xiyu. But who would have thought that it wasn't the great art of beauty that took effect, but Guan Xiyu actually fell in love with her? Yang Gongdu shook his head and said, "To be honest, when I deduced this, I was also very surprised. With Hall Master Guan's status, what woman can't you get? This saintess is indeed extremely beautiful, but she's a rose with poisonous thorns. Ordinary people can't touch her. Hall Master Guan, do you know that you're playing with fire? Taking in a demonic path saintess. Can you face the ancestors of your Guanzhong torture room and Chu Juxia?" Guan Xiyu lowered her head slightly and said expressionlessly, "The tribulation of love is difficult. Who can explain the word, love, clearly? Everything I learned was taught in the Guanzhong torture room. My current status and power were bestowed to me by Lord Chu Kuanga. All these years, I've been conscientious and conscientious. I've never let down the Guanzhong torture room, nor have I let down Lord Chu Kuanga's trust. I, Guan Xiyu, have a clear conscience. I've done everything that I can. If I can't even protect a woman I love, how can I, Guan Siyu, have the face to stand in the underworld? Yang Gongdu, I don't care what schemes you have today. In my Guanzhong torture room, all of this is a joke. Mei Qinglian is my wife, not some demonic path saintess. No one will believe what you say, and no one dares to believe it. As she spoke, Guan Siyu looked around and said coldly, have any of you seen anyone from the demonic path in my Guanzhong torture room? Xiao Yi and the others were shocked, and then they shook their heads. This matter had too much of an impact on them. There was too much information, and they were unable to digest it. But when they saw Guan Siyu's appearance, they immediately made the most suitable choice, and that was to stand on Guan Siyu's side. In the Guanzhong torture room, no one could shake Guan Siyu's status, power, or prestige. Even if he wanted to protect Mei Qinglian, no one in the Guanzhong torture room dared to stop him, and no one dared to say a word. As for how the people of the underworld would react if this matter spread to the entire underworld, that was not within their consideration for the time being. Yang Gongdu raised his eyebrows and said, Hall Master Guan is indeed domineering. In terms of prestige, I'm afraid you're already close to Chu Juxia's status in the Guanzhong torture room. In the past generations of the Guanzhong torture room, I reckon that other than the founder of the Guanzhong torture room, only Chu Juxia and Hall Master Guan have the highest prestige. However, Hall Master Guan, you can protect Mei Qinglian, but can you also protect another big shot from the diabolism? Yang Gongdu suddenly pointed at Chu Xiao with a sly smile and said, has anyone told you that Chu Xiao, the first on the Longhu leaderboard, is a hero of the Guanzhong torture room, an existence who brought glory to the Guanzhong torture room, is actually the ruthless rising star of the diabolism Lin Yi, who just killed thousands of martial arts experts in Red Maple Valley. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone present was in an uproar. This matter was even more shocking to them than the fact that Mei Qinglian was the diabolism's holy maiden. The first and second on the Longhu leaderboard were actually the same person? Most importantly, Chu Xiao and Lin Yi had nothing to do with each other. How could they be the same person? Chu Xiao looked at Yang Gongdu expressionlessly. In fact, the moment Mei Qinglian's identity was exposed, Chu Xiao secretly cursed in his heart. He was afraid that he was also at risk of being exposed. Now it seemed that it was indeed so. His identity had also been exposed. Could it be that it was also that traitor from the Yinma clan who leaked it? But who exactly was that traitor? Chu Xiao was not Mei Qinglian. He had always been in the diabolism, so it was inevitable that traces would be left behind. All along, Chu Xiao had been using two identities to do things. Therefore, the only people in the diabolism who knew of Chu Xiao's identity were Mr. Liu and Wei Shuya's people. Now that his identity had been exposed, Chu Xiao did not believe that it was Mr. Liu, Wei Shuya, or the others who had revealed it. If they had wanted to harm Chu Xiao, there would have been too many opportunities. The only explanation was that they had accidentally revealed it to one of their trusted aides, but that person had become a traitor. However, at this moment, Yang Gongdu looked at Chu Xiao and smiled. Compared to Saintess Mei's identity, I am more curious about you. Chu Xiao, you have deceived the entire Jianghu. I reckon that no one would have thought that the first and second on the Longhu leaderboard were actually the same person. However, no matter how flawless your plan was, there would always be some traces left behind. In the past, when you were being chased by the Blue Dragon Society's former Heavenly Sin Branch leader, Duan Tianlang, you pretended to be a member of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army. Only a few people knew about this, but no one cared about it. It was only when I helped His Highness the Crown Prince gain control of his portion of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army that I found out that you had pretended to be a member of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army and asked for help from the White Tiger Hall. At that time, the White Tiger Hall's hall leader was already dead, and the others were too weak. They were not responsible, nor were they in the mood to pursue this matter. However, I am a very curious person, so I specifically looked for the survivors of that White Tiger Hall's hall leader. In the end, I found out that when you pretended to be a member of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, you used the name Lin Yi. Chu Xiao said expressionlessly, there are so many people with the same name in the Jianghu. Is it very strange that I randomly came up with a name? Yang Gongdu shook his head. Of course it's not strange. If it was anyone else, even if they knew about this matter, they would definitely think that it was a coincidence. However, I am different. I am a very suspicious person, and also a very curious person. That is why I specifically went to investigate a lot of information about you. As I said before, under the sun, no one can truly become invisible. The degree of similarity between you and Lin Yi is too great. Some of your habits of speech, some of your actions, are extremely similar. As long as you appear, Lin Yi will not appear, and vice versa. Back in the minor mortal sky, I asked many cultivators, but you and Lin Yi have never appeared at the same time. Even when the Longhu list's outstanding talents fought Zhang Qingzhen, Lin Yi's identity did not appear. Furthermore, every time Lin Yi was injured, you, Chu Xiao, would go into closed-door cultivation. I found out about your closed-door cultivation and rest schedule from some of the constables in the Guanxi region. You are shockingly similar to Lin Yi's. The first time might have been a coincidence, but with so many coincidences, is it also a coincidence? In terms of acting, Chu Xiao or Lin Yi, you are much better than that Saintess Mei. Chu Xiao heaved a sigh of relief. No one had betrayed him. In the end, he had been the one to give himself away. However, there was nothing he could do about this. Just as Yang Gongdu had said, no one could truly become invisible under the sun. No matter how careful Chu Xiao had been, it was inevitable that he would leave behind some clues. In particular, when he had chosen to use the alias Lin Yi, it had been a subconscious choice on Chu Xiao's part. After all, this was the name he had used for decades in his previous life. Furthermore, he had no control over the White Tiger Hall. When he had heard that the hall master of the White Tiger Hall had died, Chu Xiao had thought that this matter had been resolved. In reality, neither the White Tiger Hall nor the Dragon Rider's Imperial Army had investigated this matter in detail. However, who would have thought that Yang Gongdu would not let go of this tiny clue and forcefully find out about Chu Xiao's identity? Yang Gongdu narrowed his eyes at Guan Siyu and said in a deep voice, Hallmaster Guan, you can protect Mei Qinglian, but can you protect Chu Xiao, who is also Lin Yi? One is the saintess of the Yin demon sect, and the other is a rising star of the hidden devil lineage. He has just become famous in the Jianghu with his ruthless methods. Your Guanzhong torture room will soon become a den of demons. Chapter 624. When Chu Xiao's identity was revealed, Guan Siyu was no less shocked than the others. This was because he really did not expect that Chu Xiao was also a member of the Devil Dao. He was actually Lin Yi. Guan Siyu was able to discover Mei Qinglian's identity because Mei Qinglian had taken the initiative to use the beauty technique on Guan Siyu. However, Chu Xiao did not reveal any flaws in front of Guan Siyu. Moreover, Chu Xiao had officially joined the Hidden Devil Clan. To be precise, he had met Mr. Liu when he was investigating the Pegasus Ranch's Qiu Zhenqing case. Therefore, in the beginning, Chu Xiao really had nothing to do with the Hidden Devil Clan. Although Guan Siyu could also sense that Mei Qinglian was helping Chu Xiao, in his opinion, Mei Qinglian should have wanted to have more say in the Guanzhong torture room. Therefore, she was prepared to support Chu Xiao, who did not have a complicated background and did not have much experience. Guan Siyu did not think that Chu Xiao was also a member of the Devil Dao. Feng Sha, who was at the side, had been in a daze since Guan Siyu had made his move. At this moment, he seemed to have recovered. He glared at Yang Gongdu and said, Why didn't you tell me that Chu Xiao was actually a member of the Devil Dao? Yang Gongdu had even hidden this matter from him. Otherwise, Feng Sha would not have said those words to Chu Xiao at the beginning of the meeting. Yang Gongdu said lightly, If I had told you everything, why would you have chosen to tell Guan Siyu everything in public? You would have probably told everything to Guan Siyu in secret, right? How could this matter have blown up? Feng Sha's face revealed a trace of anger. He knew that he had been used by Yang Gongdu. In Feng Sha's opinion, exposing Mei Qinglian's identity was just like getting rid of a malignant tumor for the Guanzhong torture room. It wasn't a big deal, and the Guanzhong torture room could handle it internally. However, although Chu Xiao's strength was not at the Wu Dao Grand Master level, he was more famous in the Jianghu, and things were more difficult to deal with. Feng Sha wasn't an idiot. He didn't really want to destroy the Guanzhong torture room, so if he found out about Chu Xiao's identity, he would definitely tell Guan Siyu in secret instead of saying it in front of everyone. From the very beginning, Yang Gongdu had wanted to make use of him to blow up the matter. Guan Siyu looked coldly at Yang Gongdu and said, Speak, what exactly do you want? Yang Gongdu was known as the Poison Dragon Warrior. His methods were ruthless and he would not do anything without benefits. Everything he did had a purpose. This time, he used Feng Sha to throw all the negative things about the Guanzhong torture room into the light. Guan Siyu couldn't think of anything else other than setting up the Guanzhong torture room and harming others without benefiting himself. Yang Gongdu narrowed his eyes and said, "Hall Leader Guan, this is not a small matter. The Guanzhong torture room has taken in Mei Qinglian, the Holy Virgin of the Darkness Demon faction, and Chu Xiao, a hidden rising star of the Diabolism. This is a big deal in the Jianghu. Think about the karma of the Yinma bloodline and the people Chu Xiao has killed. Once his identity is exposed, trouble will come one after another. The Guanzhong torture room can't stop it. However, if you can stand on the Crown Prince's side and let the Guanzhong torture room merge with Eastern Qi and help the Crown Prince, Eastern Qi, will help you stop the messy things in the Jianghu. You, Guan Siyu, will still be the hall leader of the Guanzhong torture room. It won't be a problem even if you want to pass it on to your disciple or son." Hearing Yang Gongdu's words, everyone present understood Yang Gongdu's plan. He actually planned to seize the entire Guanzhong torture room. Originally, the Guanzhong torture room had nothing to do with him. Whether Guan Siyu was bewitched or deliberately took in the people of the Diabolism, some things might be interesting, but it had nothing to do with Yang Gongdu. However, with Yang Gongdu's intervention, the meaning of all this changed. The Guanzhong torture room was located in the middle of the three countries. Since Guan Siyu became the hall leader of the torture chamber, she had always insisted on seeking a neutral position. However, at the same time, the geographical location of the Guanzhong torture room was also very important. If any country obtained the Guanzhong torture room, it would be equivalent to having an additional bridgehead to attack the other two countries. However, the Guanzhong torture room itself was not weak. Once someone forcibly attacked the Guanzhong torture room, not only would it attract strong resistance from the Guanzhong torture room, but it would also cause the other two countries to intervene. Therefore, under such circumstances, the three countries naturally formed a balance, and the Guanzhong torture room developed in this fragile balance. However, others could not attack the Guanzhong torture room. What if the Guanzhong torture room surrendered to another country? Yang Gongdu was the strategist of the Crown Prince, LV Longji. If he could help the Crown Prince seize the Guanzhong torture room, with this great contribution, no one in the whole of Eastern Qi would be able to shake LV Longji's position. Yang Gongdu would naturally have the merit to help the Crown Prince. After LV Longji ascended the throne, he could use his skills as an emperor to his heart's content and fulfill his ambitions. Guan Siyu squinted at Yang Gongdu and said coldly, "Surrender to LV Longji and Eastern Qi?" "Yang Gongdu, I'm afraid you've long set your sights on the Guanzhong torture room. Do you know how much I've sacrificed for the Guanzhong torture room today? Now you're telling me this and threatening me to join Eastern Qi. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you?" Guan Siyu's aura was like a volcanic eruption. His aura soared into the sky and was extremely terrifying. There were strong and weak martial Dao masters. Qiao Liandong, the Yang family's patriarch, and Lu Hongye, who had died at the hands of Chu Xiao, were actually the weakest among the martial Dao masters. On the other hand, people like Zhan Yangzi and Su Xing were considered quite strong. Those who truly stood at the peak of this realm were people like Chen Qingdi, Xian Longzi, and Chu Wuji. In the past, no one had thought that Guan Siyu could stand shoulder to shoulder with these people. Everyone thought that Guan Siyu was able to rank in the top 10 of the wind cloud list because of his status. In Xiaofan heaven, Guan Siyu's attack had already shocked everyone. At this moment, Guan Siyu displayed his powerful aura without holding back. He could almost completely crush Fang Sha and Yang Gongdu. Even Mei Qinglian couldn't compare to him. Although Yang Gongdu was no match for Guan Siyu, who had displayed such a powerful aura, he still forced himself to walk out. He didn't even put up any resistance. Instead, he opened his arms and laughed. "Everyone in the world has underestimated you, Hall Master Guan, but I, Yang Gongdu, don't dare to underestimate you. I'm afraid I can't even withstand 3 of your Divine Power 9 transformations with my strength. However, I dare to come here today because I dare to bet my life with you, Hall Master Guan. I'll bet my life with the future of the Guanzhong torture room." Yang Gongdu's eyes flickered with madness as he said, "I know Mei Qinglian's identity and investigated Chu Xiao's secret. Do you really think that I didn't tell anyone? His Highness the Crown Prince already knows this news. If you kill me now, His Highness the Crown Prince will send this news to the Celestial Master Abode, the Great Light Temple, the Chunyang Dao sect, and all the other large sects in the pugilistic world. Furthermore, I've also added some harmless things to it. You should know what I'm best at. I can guarantee that after these large sects see these things, they'll definitely want to exterminate your Guanzhong torture hall immediately to eliminate the evil and defend the righteous. I'll use my life in exchange for the Guanzhong torture room that has been passed down for hundreds of years and is not inferior to the top large sects in the pugilistic world. It's worth it. Hall Master Guan, I dare to bet my life. I wonder if you dare to use the Guanzhong torture room that has been passed down for hundreds of years as a bet? Eunuch Chen, who was standing behind Yang Gongdu, was crazily cursing Yang Gongdu in his heart. This lunatic. When he came, Yang Gongdu did not say that this matter would be so dangerous. He even used his life as a bet. He even looked so confident that Eunuch Chen thought that he was just here to show off and watch the show. He did not expect that as he watched, it would escalate to the level of gambling with his life. Yang Gongdu wanted to court death, but he did not. Everyone present looked at Yang Gongdu with a solemn gaze. Those who could be listed on the honor roll list were all existences that could stir up a storm in the pugilistic world. None of them were ordinary people. Wind-sweeping Tower would not allow a mediocre person to enter the honor roll list. That would be destroying their own reputation. Actually, Yang Gongdu's life was not considered a success. He had always been a failure. He had painstakingly helped the Northern Yan Alliance and gathered the strength of many pugilistic sects to defeat Eastern Qi. In the end, he lost everything because he participated in the battle for the throne. After that, he stirred up a storm in West Chu and almost succeeded. However, at the same time, he offended the two strongest forces in the world, the moon-worshipping sect and the celestial master manor. He was chased out of West Chu and did not dare to return. Yang Gongdu's life was full of defeats. Although he almost never won, he did not die under such an encounter and did not lose heart. He began to seek refuge with LV Longji and continued to stir up trouble in the pugilistic world. This person's tenacity and perseverance were rare in the world, and it was enough to prove his strength and ability. Today's scene was almost the same as Yang Gongdu had expected. Guan Xiyu was not so easy to yield to, and what he lacked was strength. There were people in Eastern Qi who were stronger than Guan Xiyu, but none of LV Longji's subordinates were. Therefore, even if Yang Gongdu invited the few martial Dao masters who were on LV Longji's side, he would not be able to defeat Guan Xiyu. Instead of taking the initiative to court death, he would rather take a gamble with Guan Xiyu. In Yang Gongdu's analysis of Guan Xiyu's character, there were only two things that Guan Xiyu valued the most in his life. One was Mei Qinglian, and the other was Guanzhong torture room. Although seeking refuge with Eastern Qi went against the direction of Guanzhong torture room's development, it could protect Guanzhong torture room. It could even temporarily make Guanzhong torture room stronger. Yang Gongdu believed that Guan Xiyu could easily figure out what to choose. Yang Gongdu's actions were a little crazy, but when he gambled with others, he would usually only make a move when he had 50% confidence. As for the remaining 50%, it would depend on the will of the heavens. If the heavens wanted you to succeed, 50% was enough. If the heavens wanted you to die, even if there was only a 10% risk, you would still die. Chapter 625. Everyone turned to look at Guan Xiyu. Guan Xiyu's words could decide the future of the Guanzhong torture room. In fact, among everyone present, Xiao Yi and the other torture officers of the Guanzhong torture room were the unluckiest. They relied on the Guanzhong torture room to survive, and no one wanted anything to happen to the Guanzhong torture room. However, looking at the current situation, it was obvious that there would be no peace. Therefore, they all looked at Guan Xiyu nervously, waiting to see what she would choose. Would she stick to her position as the head of the Guanzhong torture room, or would she agree to Yang Gongdu's request and join LV Longji's Eastern Qi? Guan Xiyu looked at Yang Gongdu and said expressionlessly, "Yang Gongdu, I don't know if you still remember that we met once. Back then, you were a general staff of the Northern Yan Army and worked for the Northern Yan Army." Yang Gongdu nodded and said, "Of course I remember. At that time, I didn't have my current reputation, and Hall Master Guan had just taken over the Guanzhong torture room and was surrounded by enemies." Guan Xiyu said in a deep voice, "Since you remember me, you should know my character. Even under those circumstances, I didn't compromise, let alone now. I, Guan, have never been threatened." Yang Gongdu, do you know what your biggest weakness is? It's not that there's a problem with your schemes, but that you're an extremely egoistic and self-opinionated person. You're talented and smart. At the age of 20, you're already full of schemes. You're familiar with the politics of the emperor. Those Confucian classics are no problem for you. Even if you pretend, you can pretend to be a Confucian master. However, you're too lazy to even look at them, causing your imperial examinations to fail for more than 20 years. Your martial arts talent is outstanding, and even though you started practicing martial arts in your middle age, you still managed to reach the realm of a martial arts grandmaster. However, you still look down on martial artists and think that politics and strategy are the most important. However, you were forced out of West Chu by the powerful martial arts of the moon-worshipping cult and the Celestial Master's mansion. Even now, you still haven't changed this habit of yours. You want to threaten me without absolute strength? You're still courting death. Crown Prince, if you want to reveal all of this, then go ahead. After killing you, I will give the righteous path a complete explanation. Yang Gongdu faintly felt that something was wrong. His expression changed slightly as he asked, "What explanation?" Guan Siyu narrowed her eyes and said, "An explanation for the internal strife in my Guanzhong torture room. Lin Yi, the villain of diabolism, pretended to be Chu Xiao and lurked in my Guanzhong torture room. He colluded with you, the trusted advisor of His Highness the Crown Prince, in an attempt to overthrow my Guanzhong torture room and split the Guanzhong torture room between Eastern Qi's Crown Prince and diabolism. I set things right and killed all of you. Isn't it easy to explain all this? It doesn't matter if others believe it or not. What the righteous sects want is results, an explanation. Once I kill you, I'll have an explanation." As soon as Guan Siyu's voice fell, Chu Xiao's figure moved, and he directly turned around to escape. After keeping a low profile for more than 10 years, even in the Guanzhong torture room, Guan Siyu, the iron-faced judge, only gave people the impression that she was impartial and impartial. However, it had to be known that when Guan Siyu took over the Guanzhong disciplinary hall in the past, there were both internal and external troubles. Guan Siyu's ability to use a few years to swiftly stabilize the situation during such a precarious time was absolutely not just because she was impartial. The current situation was a mess, but Guan Siyu's method of resolving it was undoubtedly the simplest and most labor-saving. She killed everyone, and then Guan Siyu could explain herself. The other righteous Dao sects could give whatever reason they wanted. Looking at Chu Xiao's figure, Guan Siyu's eyes revealed a hint of coldness. She made a seal with her hand, and the majestic genuine qi seemed to turn into a boundless sea wave, condensing into a sea eye that kept spinning. An extremely strong suction swallowed everything, and it actually pulled Chu Xiao's figure backward. Magical 9 transformations. Sea stirring. Chu Xiao, you disappoint me. If you weren't a member of the Yinma clan, I would really be prepared to nurture you as the next successor of the Guanzhong torture room. Guan Siyu's eyes revealed a deep sense of disappointment. This was not hypocritical hindsight, but the truth. Previously, Guan Siyu had not thought that Chu Xiao was a member of the Yinma clan. Therefore, after Chu Xiao stepped into the Longhu list, Guan Siyu was really prepared to let Chu Xiao take over the Guanzhong torture room. Although Chu Xiao had displayed many shortcomings, such as being too selfish and scheming, and his ruthless methods to the point of being extremely bold, these were not considered problems in Guan Siyu's eyes. The Guanzhong torture room's position was sensitive. If it was really handed over to a mediocre person with a hesitant and indecisive character, the Guanzhong torture room would be completely finished. Chu Xiao had both strength and ability. He was just right to take over this position. However, who knew that Chu Xiao was also a member of the Yinma clan? What he wanted was not to be the successor of the Guanzhong torture room, but to plot to annex the Guanzhong torture room. This was absolutely intolerable to Guan Siyu. With a gentle push of his palm, the vortex of Gang Qi spun rapidly and finally exploded with a loud bang. The extreme pulling force came with a loud bang, as if it wanted to completely tear Chu Xiao, who was in it, into pieces. With a Buddhist seal in his hand, the Buddhist light around Chu Xiao suddenly erupted. However, the deep Buddhist light was filled with a frightening demonic aura. The power of Buddha and demonic suppressed him at the same time, forcibly resisting the pulling force of the churning sea. This barely allowed Chu Xiao's figure to remain intact in the explosion of the Gang Qi vortex. However, this also consumed an extremely shocking amount of energy for Chu Xiao. Guan Siyu's churning sea was definitely a killer move for warriors with weaker physical bodies. If Chu Xiao had not cultivated the 9 heavens demonic golden body and the great Vajra divine strength, which were both strong body refining techniques, he would have been torn to pieces by this move. Just as Guan Xiyu was about to make another move, Mei Qinglian blocked in front of Guan Xiyu and frowned. You can't kill Chu Xiao. Guan Xiyu's eyes softened a little as he said softly, Madam, get out of the way. Don't worry. Things haven't reached the point of no return. Chu Xiao killed countless people as a demonic cultivator. Now that his identity has been exposed and he has fooled countless people, the righteous sects will definitely not let it go. Therefore he must die. Only with his death can I give the people of Jianghu an explanation. However, you are different. The Yin demon sect has long been destroyed, especially you. You don't have much karma. After I kill Chu Xiao and kill Yang Gongdu and the others, I am confident that I can protect you and completely separate you from the Yinma clan. With me here, no one can touch you. Mei Qinglian shouted in a low voice. You are crazy. You only think of the righteous sects, but do you know Chu Xiao's position in the Yinma clan? If you kill him, how will you give the Yinma clan an explanation? Guan Xiyu said lightly, I don't need to give the Yinma clan an explanation. In this situation, I must stand on the side of the righteous and demonic. At present, the righteous and demonic sects are opposing each other. The Yinma clan and the Bright Demon sect together are not as good as the righteous martial arts world, let alone the Yinma clan alone. It is clear who is strong and who is weak. I can't stand on the side of the weak, so I can only give the strong an explanation. I have no choice. Madam, you don't need to say any more. I said that I will protect you. Stand to the side. Mei Qinglian did not retreat. Instead, the demonic aura around her body lingered, as if there was a goddess dancing. It did not seem like an evil demonic path, but there was another kind of magical feeling. Guan Xiyu fell in love with her, but in fact, Mei Qinglian did not fall in love with Guan Xiyu. She only had a complicated feeling about Guan Xiyu. Was it guilt, was it moved, or was it something else? Mei Qinglian herself wasn't sure. However, Mei Qinglian could see her position very clearly. She was a member of the Yinma clan and had a close relationship with Wei Shuya. She could also be considered as a member of Wei Shuya's faction. Chu Xiao was a person that Wei Shuya valued. He was the heir of the Yinma clan. Although many people in the Yinma clan might not think so, after the last meeting, Chu Xiao entered the Devil Sky realm. At least in name, Chu Xiao was the heir of the Yinma clan. Therefore, no matter what, Mei Qinglian would only stand on Chu Xiao's side. Guan Xiyu shook her head and said, Madam, you are too naive. I said that the enchanted girl technique has no effect on me. Master Chu Kuanga left behind many techniques, which I have integrated into the Divine 9 transformations. Mental techniques are useless against me. As soon as she finished speaking, Guan Xiyu formed a seal with her hand and lightly spat out 2 words, Exorcism. A thin and small divine shadow condensed. It had 3 faces and 6 arms. It looked weak, but wherever it passed, the demonic aura around Mei Qinglian dissipated. She could feel that her mental strength was being suppressed. On the other side, Chu Xiao's body was circulating the demonic rotation great technique in a frenzy. An invisible longbow condensed in his hand, and the god-vanquishing arrow was unleashed. A powerful mental strength burst forth, but it was caught by the 6 arms of the divine figure, and was forcibly broken. In the past, when Xiahou Zhan came to fight, Guan Xiyu used this exorcism to forcibly break the Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique. Those who had not fought with Guan Xiyu would not understand how terrifying he was. In fact, Guan Xiyu's martial Dao was very similar to that of Chu Xiao. He was good in all aspects and had no obvious shortcomings. The Divine 9 transformations was a masterpiece that condensed dozens or even hundreds of martial arts. When stacked together, its power was infinite. Guan Xiyu threw out a strange array disc in his hand. At the same time, his body erupted with stellar energy. He did not have a saber in his hand, but countless stellar wind saber chi burst out and enveloped Mei Qinglian. Guan Xiyu used the Divine 9 transformations Call Wind, but he did not really kill Mei Qinglian. Call Wind only forced Mei Qinglian into the range of the array disc. When the array disc landed on the ground, a mechanical sound was heard. A blue halo appeared and constantly weakened Mei Qinglian's mental strength and stellar energy. She wanted to break the blue halo, but the power on it suddenly solidified, making it impossible for Mei Qinglian to destroy it. She could only be imprisoned within it. Guan Siyu said faintly, "Madam, don't waste your energy. That is the black martial sect's god imprisoning prison. It is specially used to temporarily imprison some grandmaster-level experts. When I kill them all, I will let you out." Chapter 626. Guan Siyu's strength was beyond the imagination of Chu Xiao and Mei Qinglian. Mei Qinglian didn't expect that Guan Siyu, who had always been obedient to her, would be so powerful. Even if Chu Wuji came, he wouldn't have much of a chance of winning. Chu Xiao also had a gloomy look. He had underestimated Guan Siyu. It should be said that Guan Siyu had been hiding his strength all along. In fact, Chu Xiao had seen Guan Siyu fight many times. Previously, he saw Guan Siyu fight against Xiahou Zhen. He won easily, but he clearly didn't use his full strength. It was easy, but it wasn't a crushing defeat. In the Xiaofan heaven, Guan Siyu's opponents weren't too strong. Guan Siyu's cultivation was only slightly stronger than theirs, so he defeated them easily. However, no matter how strong the opponent was, Guan Siyu's strength was always slightly stronger than his opponent. He defeated them easily. This was very terrifying because no one could figure out what Guan Siyu's trump card was. Now, Guan Siyu was almost using his full strength. Even a casual move made Chu Xiao and Mei Qinglian feel very helpless. At this time, Yang Gongdu had already taken advantage of Guan Siyu's attack on Chu Xiao and was preparing to retreat with his people. Speaking of which, Yang Gongdu's ability wasn't weak. However, as long as it was a trap that he set up, it seemed that he had never succeeded. It was as if he was born with bad luck. This time, Yang Gongdu's plan didn't go wrong. He investigated the identities of Mei Qinglian and Chu Xiao and made use of Fang Sha to completely blow things up. He forced the Guanzhong torture room into a desperate situation. If Guan Siyu's strength was a little weaker and his character was a little softer, then Guan Siyu would definitely agree to his request. Unfortunately, Guan Siyu was tougher than he imagined. Her strength was far beyond his imagination. She used her strength to break through. As long as she killed all of them, everything else would be easy to explain. At this time, seeing Yang Gongdu escape, Guan Siyu's eyes immediately revealed a cold look. Compared to Chu Xiao, Guan Siyu actually hated Yang Gongdu more. It was this person who instigated trouble, which led to today's events. How could he let Yang Gongdu leave so easily? Moreover, although Yang Gongdu kept fighting despite repeated failures, his overall plan had never succeeded. However, he was good at sophistry and was quick-witted. If he was allowed to return alive, he would be long-winded in the righteous Tao sects. Who knew he might cause trouble? It would be the easiest to kill him as well. Guan Siyu took a step forward and formed a seal with his hand. Siyu immediately, an array halo rose from the courtyard and blocked Yang Du and the others. Guan Siyu said coldly, "This is my Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall's inner hall courtyard. Do you think that there isn't an array formation protecting it?" Our Guanzhong Discipline Hall's history is a bit short, and our foundation is slightly lacking, but we can still use the sect-protecting formation. Guan Siyu turned to Xiao Yi and the others and shouted, "Everyone, attack! Kill Yang Gongdu and his subordinates. Don't leave a single one alive." Xiao Yi and the others looked at each other and did not say anything. They immediately attacked Yang Gongdu and the others with the warriors of the Guanzhong torture room. This was the power that came with prestige. No matter what happened to the Guanzhong torture room in the future, or what storm would arise from today's events, as long as Guan Siyu was not dead, he would be the hall master of the Guanzhong torture room. They would also habitually listen to Guan Siyu's orders. In the end, Guan Siyu glanced at Fang Sha and said in a deep voice, "Fang Sha, you were also used by others. On account of the fact that you have no ill intentions towards the Guanzhong torture room, I will give you a way out. Kill Yang Gongdu, and you will still be the second in command of the punishment division. Your power will not change. I will pretend that today's events never happened." Fang Sha gritted his teeth. The murderous aura around him surged as he attacked Yang Gongdu. He had no other choice but to listen to Guan Siyu. Moreover, he really hated Yang Gongdu. He hated him for using him and causing such a mess. Yang Gongdu also held the folding fan in his hand and fought with Fang Sha. However, after more than a dozen moves, he was at a slight disadvantage. In fact, Yang Gongdu's talent and comprehension were very strong. Otherwise, he would not have cultivated in his middle age and missed several optimal cultivation periods. Even so, he could still cultivate to the Grandmaster realm. However, it was a pity that he did not focus all his energy on the martial path. As a result, although his cultivation level was not weak, his actual combat ability was not very strong. At the very least, he could not compare to Feng Sha. He did not rely on his strength to be ranked on the honor list. Chu Xiu cursed inwardly when he saw the array rising outside. Guan Siyu was really determined to catch them all in one fell swoop. Chu Xiu looked at Guan Siyu and said in a low voice, "Hallmaster Guan, you don't have to be so ruthless. The righteous path sects are not united. Although you can give them an explanation by killing me, you can forget about obtaining any benefits or protection. On the other hand, you can let us go today and only kill Yang Gongdu and the others. When the time comes, you can push all the blame onto the demonic path. Isn't that good?" Guan Siyu held the mountain moving seal in her hand. It was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. The surrounding essence chi of heaven and earth emitted explosive sounds from being compressed. "Of course not. Chu Xiu, no matter what you say today, it's useless. Since you plan to plot against my Guanzhong torture room, then today, you will stay in the Guanzhong torture room forever." People of Guan Siyu's level and status could be described as stubborn or decisive. In any case, as long as Guan Siyu had decided on something, it would not be easy to change her mind, let alone in this situation. Chu Xiu was cursing Yang Gongdu in his heart. This fellow was simply a god of plague. If he couldn't accomplish anything, he would also implicate others. Chu Xiu formed the fast and slow 9 words formula. The 9 seals merged into one, and the 9 Buddhist seals rotated rapidly like a wheel. Chu Xiu's body was in the middle of the wheel. As his hand seals fell, the 9 Buddhist seals merged into one and blasted out. The power was earth-shattering, and Guan Siyu's mountain moving seal was shattered. "Call the wind." These 2 words were uttered lightly. In an instant, endless astral energy gathered into a storm of blades. It swept out for thousands of feet and crushed towards Chu Xiu. The same move had only forced Mei Qinglian back temporarily. However, when it came to Chu Xiu, it seemed as if it wanted to hack him into 1,000 pieces. This difference in treatment was a little too great. Amidst the boundless blades, boundless blood qi erupted from the sky demon dance in Chu Xiu's hands. Chu Xiu used the blood transformation divine saber and activated the power of blood qi in his body, attaching it to the sky demon dance. As the saber slashed down, a fierce and sharp force rippled out. It tore apart the endless blade wind and headed straight for Guan Siyu. In fact, Chu Xiu had not used his full strength all this time. Among the 2 identities, the identity of Chu Xiu had mastered more powerful martial arts techniques, while the identity of Lin Yi had mastered more evil martial arts like the mental demon rotation technique and powerful trump cards like the 7 demon saber and the hungry ghost Dao incarnation. If they were used separately, Chu Xiu could only use 70% of his strength at most. However, this time, when facing Guan Siyu, Chu Xiu used his full strength. Guan Siyu's expression did not change at all when she slashed apart the wind blade. She slammed her palm down, and a giant astral energy hand that was 1,000 feet long condensed in midair and grabbed at Chu Xiu. Divine 9 transformations. Heaven overturning. This palm was not a simple slap, but a grab. Everywhere it passed, the heaven-earth essence chi was imprisoned. As for Chu Xiu, he was like Monkey Sun who had fallen into the Buddha's palm. The saber was very close, but it seemed as if it would never reach Guan Siyu. The palm clenched as if it was crushing a fly. It wanted to crush Chu Xiu, who was within it. The moment the giant hand clenched, Chu Xiu, who was within it, formed a Buddhist seal. A Vairocana Dhamma form bloomed behind him. It was as hot as fire, and Buddhist light illuminated the surroundings. Sun overturning technique. Endless golden Buddhist light bloomed from the giant hand. It broke through the obstruction and shattered the giant hand. Chu Xiu's figure was like a bolt of lightning as he charged at Guan Siyu. At some point, the 7 demon saber had been placed on Chu Xiu's back. His hand was already holding one of the sabers. The saber's name was Love. Greed, anger, obsession, hate, love, evil and desire. Love was not a negative emotion. However, love could make people crazy, stubborn, and lose their hearts. When the love saber slashed out, there was no monstrous demon chi, nor was there any strange phenomenon. It was just a simple saber strike that didn't even contain a bit of earth energy. However, this saber strike triggered all sorts of emotions in Guan Xiyu's heart. Even if his 9 transformations divine power could resist the essence soul mystic technique, it was useless. This saber strike was aimed at Guan Xiyu's heart. The youth had joined the Guanzhong torture hall. Guan Xiyu had dedicated his life to the Guanzhong torture hall. For the sake of being impartial, who knew how much Guan Xiyu had paid? From his youth to his middle age, Guan Xiyu had always carried more responsibilities than anything else. Chu Kuanga's high regard for him and the expectations of the Guanzhong torture room's disciples had all been shouldered by him. It wasn't until Mei Qinglian came to his side that Guan Xiyu felt that his world seemed to have a different color. He knew that Mei Qinglian had evil intentions, and he also knew that her kindness to him was all an act. However, he didn't know when it started, but Guan Xiyu had slowly turned from accompanying her to entering the play himself. Life was like a play, and Guan Xiyu had already taken this play seriously. As the love saber slashed down, Guan Xiyu's figure seemed to freeze on the spot and didn't move at all. However, when the saber was about to reach him, Guan Xiyu suddenly reached out and grabbed the saber in his hand. He said in a hoarse voice, "This is the 7-demon saber that you used to severely injure Su Xing and kill Zhen Yongzi? It's very evil, but it's not strong enough." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu suddenly felt a huge force attack him. A powerful earth energy directly surged into the love saber. Chu Xiu's figure retreated a few steps, but the saber was forcibly broken by that powerful force. Guan Xiyu had love in his heart, but he used his strong willpower to suppress this love. For all these years, he had always known about Mei Qinglian's identity, and knew that Mei Qinglian was plotting against him in the Guanzhong torture room. However, Guan Xiyu still accompanied her in putting on an act and watched everything with a clear mind. Chapter 627. After obtaining the 7 demon blades, this was the first time that Chu Xiu had failed to use them. Of course, this was within Chu Xiu's expectations. The 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures were the power of a person's emotions. However, as long as they were emotions, there was a possibility that they could be suppressed. Just like Guan Xiyu, his emotions were extremely hot, but he could use his willpower to forcefully suppress these emotions. It was extremely terrifying. In other words, Guan Xiyu's self-control was much stronger than that of monks and Taoists like Su Xing and Zhan Yongzi. However, it was a pity that one of Chu Xiu's 7 demon blades had been destroyed. The 7 demon blades could not be considered a divine weapon. In terms of toughness, they were not even comparable to Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance. The 7 demon blades' true use lay in the evil power of the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures. Once this lost its effect, the 7 demon blades would not even be comparable to an ordinary precious weapon. However, although one of Chu Xiu's 7 demon blades had been destroyed, his expression did not change at all. He still took the initiative to attack Guan Xiyu. Guan Xiyu snorted coldly. Just as he was about to continue attacking, he suddenly turned around. He formed a moving mountain seal and blasted it behind him. Unknowingly, a black-robed man was already standing behind him. Under the moving mountain seal, a strong gale blew up the black-robed man's mask, immediately revealing En Lionian's pale and lifeless face. "You killed En Lionian as well." A cold glint flashed in Guan Xiyu's eyes. He should have known that Chu Xiu, who was on his side, had a better reason to kill En Lionian than any outsider. However, although Guan Xiyu could not see through the puppet's background, he could sense that En Lionian's corpse was not only emitting an aura of death, but also an extremely evil aura. Therefore, his moving mountain seal did not stop at all. Instead, it blasted straight at En Lionian. However, at this moment, En Lionian's mouth opened wider and wider. In the end, his mouth was so wide that it did not seem human. Endless astral energy was being devoured by his huge mouth. An evil, hungry ghost with 2 horns crawled out of En Lionian's mouth. It opened its mouth wide and wanted to swallow Guan Xiyu. This was the first time Chu Xiu had used the hungry ghost realm clone with a human puppet. However, even Chu Xiu could not help but ridicule Gong Shu Yuan when he saw the puppet attack. What the hell was he doing? The hungry ghost Dao incarnation only had a spirit, so he used a puppet as a vessel, allowing the hungry ghost Dao to condense an incorporeal body and then devour the real body. It was similar to when Chu Xiao used the hungry ghost Dao incarnation in the past. In the end, Gong Shu Yuan set up a formation in the human puppet, forcing the hungry ghost Dao incarnation to crawl out of the human puppet's mouth. This was simply an aesthetic deformity, okay? Gong Shu Yuan had been that, and he had set up a formation within the puppet. He demon and he had Xiao Yuan had the ghost realm, so he had been Xiao. Vanquish evil. The 9 divine transformations contained countless cultivation techniques. Guan Xiyu's vanquish evil technique was easy to see traces of a Taoist demon-subduing cultivation technique. The instant Guan Xiyu attacked, Chu Xiao also attacked with his finger. Endless death and destruction fused into it. A black power pierced through the void, as though it had split open a deathly silent land. Divine vanquish immortal slaying finger. At that moment, Guan Xiyu did not even turn her head. Similarly, she lightly tapped with her finger, and a tiny sword chi flashed out. It looked inconspicuous, but even a physical invulnerability realm martial artist's sword would be more imposing than this tiny sword chi. However, this light sword chi tore apart the energy of heaven and earth. As it danced, it contained an extreme sharpness of swordsmanship. Any power was torn apart by the sword chi. Even the immortal slaying finger, which represented death and destruction, was no exception. The evil vanquish sword chi that filled the sky suppressed the ghost realm clone and forced the human puppet to retreat. The sword intent contained in the small sword chi was probably stronger than that of the Sword King City's 4 major sword hall heads. As it danced, it completely destroyed Chu Xiao's immortal slaying finger. Chu Xiao and Guan Xiyu exchanged blows. Although it seemed like they were evenly matched, Chu Xiao's face had already turned pale. Regardless of whether he used the 7 demon blades or combined the 9 seals, only this kind of trump card could block Guan Xiyu's move. Even if he used the human puppet, it wouldn't cause Chu Xiao to suffer the backlash of the Ghost Realm clone. However, the mental strength consumed by using the human puppet still belonged to Chu Xiao. After this series of exchanges, Chu Xiao's power was on the verge of drying up. Of course, it wasn't like Chu Xiao didn't have any room to fight. For example, the 7 ultimate moves he obtained from the Black Demon Tower made Chu Xiao vomit blood at a glance. There was also the Red Dust Slash and Triple City Annihilation Arrow, which he still didn't know if he could successfully use. However, these martial skills that even Chu Xiao wasn't sure if he could use were really unreliable. Once he used them, he would really be in a desperate situation. Of course, Chu Xiao's side was in danger, but some people were in even more danger, such as Yang Gongdu's side. Yang Gongdu's own strength wasn't very strong. Although the people he brought were from the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, they were only a few squads of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army. His opponents were the elites of the entire Guanzhong torture room. Regardless of whether it was Xiao Yi, the torture officers, or the other warriors of the Guanzhong torture room, those who were qualified to come here to discuss matters were not ordinary people. Once they started fighting, the difference in strength was obvious. In particular, Feng Sha's attacks were almost crazy. He couldn't wait to tear Yang Gongdu's body into 1,000 pieces. This time, he had been used by Yang Gongdu and had almost been consigned to eternal damnation in the Guanzhong torture room. It was true that he had selfish motives and was dissatisfied with Guan Xiyu protecting Mei Qinglian. However, he didn't want the Guanzhong torture room to be destroyed. The more they fought, the more dangerous the situation became. Even if Yang Gongdu used all his trump cards, it was still useless. Looking at Guan Xiyu, Yang Gongdu shouted, "Guan Xiyu, let me go. I have a big secret to tell you." Guan Xiyu, who was preparing to completely take down Chu Xiao, was unmoved. Everyone in the Jianghu knew that Yang Gongdu's eloquence was much stronger than his martial arts. He was best at bewitching people, so Yang Gongdu couldn't be bothered to listen to his nonsense. Seeing that Guan Xiyu wasn't listening to him at all, Yang Gongdu shouted, "Guan Xiyu, don't you want to know how Chu Kuanga died back then? Chu Kuanga treated you like a disciple in the past, but he didn't tell you who seriously injured him until he died. Moreover, Chu Kuanga's death is related to the future of the Guanzhong torture room. If this problem isn't solved, I'm afraid that you, Guan Xiyu, will not be far from death as Chu Kuanga's successor." Hearing Yang Gongdu's words, Guan Xiyu suddenly turned around and said coldly, "What did you say? Do you know who tried to kill Master Chu Kuanga?" In the past, Chu Kuanga had just been in charge of the Guanzhong torture room for more than 20 years. He died in an accident in the prime of his life. This was a pity for the Guanzhong torture room and a mystery. As Chu Kuanga's successor, Guan Xiu knew how strong Chu Kuanga was in the past. He was even much stronger than he was now. He had already taken half a step into the true fire spirit refining realm. However, one day, Chu Kuanga was on the verge of death when he returned to the Guanzhong torture room. He used his prestige to hand the Guanzhong torture room over to Guan Xiu and then died. No one knew who killed Chu Kuanga. At that time, although Chu Kuanga had many enemies, there were not many people in the Jianghu who could really kill him. It was not because of his strength, but because of his reputation. The reputation of the great hero Chu Kuanga was too great. He was not from the righteous path, but his chivalrous spirit was even greater than that of the righteous path sects like the Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect. Therefore, no matter how many people Chu Kuanga had offended, whoever killed him would definitely be reviled by many people in the Jianghu. Their reputation would be ruined and they would go down in history. At that time, there were no signs of the revival of the demonic path. Even the moon-worshipping sect leader Yi Shaonan was still in seclusion to comprehend the Heaven-Mending Heart Sutra. He had no interaction with Chu Kuanga at all. Moreover, to put it bluntly, Chu Kuanga had offended more people from the righteous path than the demonic path. Therefore, it was unlikely that he was killed by someone from the demonic path. Including the examination of his injuries, no one could see who killed Chu Kuanga. However, at that time, the Guanzhong torture room unanimously believed that Chu Kuanga's actions must have angered some big shots in the Jianghu, causing one or even several forces to join forces to get rid of Chu Kuanga. Since the murderer could not be found, the matter could only be dropped. Now, according to Yang Gongdu, he knew the truth of that year. Fang Sha, stop. Guan Xiu stopped Fang Sha, who was about to continue attacking. He had just turned his gaze to Yang Gongdu. Yang Gongdu did not dare to talk nonsense, nor did he habitually keep people in suspense. Instead, he told them everything in an extremely simple manner. In the past, Chu Juxia died at the hands of Divine Lord Luo, one of the 9 divine generals of the Elysium. As soon as this was said, everyone present was stunned for a moment. They did not seem to be able to react. Then Guan Xiu shouted, "Impossible!" It was no wonder that everyone present had such a reaction. The Elysium was very close to the Jianghu, but it was also very far away. It was so far away that many people had heard of the Elysium, but they could only hear about it as a legend. They had never even seen it before. The wind-sweeping towers Jianghu song had spread throughout the entire Jianghu. From that day onwards, the forces in it had been constantly changing. Even the 3 major Dao sects were different from the 3 major Dao sects in the beginning of the Jianghu song. Apart from the North and South Buddhist sects, the only forces in the Jianghu song that had not changed were the 2 forces in the beginning, the East and the West. The East referred to the East Sea Freedom Heaven. It was a force that had been passed down for countless years. It only had 1 person, but it was comparable to the top sects in the Jianghu. The West referred to the West Kunlun Heavenly Sect. Even when the Kunlun Devil cult was at its peak, it had not been able to completely occupy the West Kunlun mountain range. It could only allow the West Kunlun Devil cult to look at it from across the mountain range. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.